audio.
Thank you. So let's call the meeting to order at 6:02. Bill, you're recording?
Hold on. Yes.
Okay. So do we have any additions or deletions to the agenda?
I don't have a deletion. I'm wondering if I could ask for a alteration of the agenda.
Sure, go ahead.
After the first bullet under financials, if we could move from new business, full-time in-person instruction information after the financials, so that after Andy McLean and Dr. Backus get an opportunity to weigh in on the Australian ballot decision, that maybe we could sneak in the full-time in-person instruction after that.
Anybody have a problem with that? Okay, I would say, Bill, that shouldn't be an issue.
Okay, thank you.
I don't see it in the agenda.
It's under new business. Second bullet down.
Oh, full-time, okay. Thank you.
You bet.
Okay, and then any other additions or deletions to the agenda? We got two screens tonight, okay. Hearing none, let's move over to members of the public, and we'll go to members of staff after that. You have a chance to speak on any item, 4 minutes maximum. Action may not be able to be taken immediately, and written correspondence prior to a board meeting allows for the board to be prepared. If you are on the phone, you can press *6 to mute and unmute, and *9 to raise your hand, and a little hand pops up in the corner. Excuse me, do I have anything from any members of the public? See a lot of head shaking, no.
You do not have any blue hands up.
Okay. Going once, going twice, last and final call. Sold. Moving on, members of the staff. Going once, going twice. All good, Bill?
No blue hands. You're good to go.
Okay. Sold. Review and approve the minutes of the February 22nd, 2021 meeting. Can I get a motion and a second on that, please?
So moved.
Mark moved. Do I have a second?
I'll second Dwight.
Thank you, Dwight. So motion's been made and seconded to approve the minutes of the February 22nd, 2021 meeting. Mark, do you have anything?
I do not.
Dwight, you seconded it. You get second shot at it.
I'm good.
Anybody else? Hey, be careful. Somebody's sneaking around behind you. I just caught them. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 Appears as though the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Moving on to correspondence. I don't have any correspondence. Bill, Matt, or Tammy, I don't think we had anything come in.
I do not have anything.
Tammy and Matt are shaking their heads no, or we're good to move on. School district meeting. Decide live versus Australian ballot. So that's our first decision. So what I want to have you guys do is I want to reserve all discussion just to that topic. Are we going to have a live meeting, or are we going to have an Australian ballot vote in lieu of a meeting? So we've had that discussion a few times in the past. We put the decision off. I think we need to make a decision tonight, whether we're going to be live or Australian ballot, because even putting it off past our April meeting, it still requires quite a bit of work. And both the town of Wardsboro and the town of Dover have moved their meetings off until May. And unfortunately, or fortunately, our clerk, our school district clerk, is also a town clerk. So they have a lot of stuff to do for the town meeting. So we can't just, we can't have it at the same day as a town meeting, which somebody had suggested. And he also has to run an election at the same time to do the voting for the school board members anyways, even if we have a live meeting. So we need to give them as much notice as we can. So I'd like to open a discussion on whether we have a live meeting or an Australian ballot. Don't all jump at once. Go ahead, Mark.
Well, it's not going to be a surprise to anybody, but I still believe that the risks are too great that we should have for this year. It should be an Australian ballot.
Okay. Is there any other thoughts? Okay. If nobody else has any thoughts, I guess, Andrew?
So Rich, just one minor point would be that if you wanted to have an in-person meeting, it would be possible to have it on the same day as Wardsboro's town meeting. I could attend that. And talking with Jackie, she said we could probably use the tent that they will have set up for their town meeting and have our meeting in the morning, their town meeting in the afternoon.
What day of the week was that again, Andy?
It was on a Saturday. It was May 22nd on a Saturday.
I'm not seeing a lot. Do we have, Bill, are we missing board members? I don't see Laura or Rick.
No, all 6 board members are in attendance. You
Oh,
just can't see
cool.
both pages.
Okay. If nobody else has any comments, I'm again going to just state what I've kind of said. I feel like it's a lot safer than it was. And I think a lot of people are being vaccinated. Most of the people that attend the meeting are, have in the past been older people. They have their vaccinations. The town of Dover and the town of Wardsboro are both holding live in-person meetings for their town meetings. I don't know why the school district would have to be different. So I would, and the thing with a live meeting is if somebody who may vote no on the budget by ballot may say, hey, I think the budget should increase or it should decrease. So those are kind of my thoughts. But I guess without a lot of people saying a lot of stuff, I think we need to just kind of.
I have my hand up.
Oh, okay.
Me too.
See you now, Dwight. Okay. I'm going to go to Laura first and then Dwight.
So I'm sorry, just remind me, the Wardsboro meeting is when?
May 22nd in the afternoon. It's a Saturday.
So, what we are hearing is that, let's make sure that I'm here. Yeah. What we are hearing is that most Americans will be able to, I believe, sign up. Is that right? By the end of May, I think that's what we're hearing. And for that reason, and if we are planning outside, you know, I think I would be in favor of going at the end of May. You know, if that's possible. If we were outside, if it's the end of May, I would be in favor of going in person. If our clerks feel like we can handle that safely.
Okay, so Andy, I don't know where you moved to, but are you good with the 22nd? You said you could do that. Are you okay with the Saturday, and are you willing to do that for us?
Yes, I think if you're going to go in person, that would that'd be the best scenario, the easiest. Woodsboro's tent costs $850, which they're getting for the select board for the town meeting. I don't know if they'd want you to chip in for that, for any portion of that, or if they would just offer you that free of charge. I don't know. But that I think that if you're going to go in person, that'd be the time to do it.
Rich, I have another question.
Okay, go ahead, and then Dwight, we'll go down to you.
So if that was the sense of the majority of the board, I would, you know, the other aspect that would concern me, and I would want to make sure that we really were unified on, is that masks were expected. People wearing masks and respecting social distancing, you know, that, and I don't know that we can actually require masks at the town meeting.
So I think if it's a recommendation from the state, if the state is still mandating masks to be worn in public, I think we have no problem doing that.
Andy, do you think that we can mandate masks for town meeting?
I don't believe you can. Actually, you know, if people didn't want to wear masks, it might be that, you know, for the elections last November, you know, it was explained to presiding officers that you can't require masks. If somebody wants to vote, they need to be able to vote whether they want to wear a mask or not. So you might do something, and by the way, in Dover, we didn't have that issue come up, but you make provision for these folks, right? Because there's not going to be many of them. So, hey, here's a cordoned off area over on the side, you know, where you are not 6 feet from everybody else. You're 15 feet from everybody else. Maybe you're outside of the tent. You can still hear. We will still count your vote. But the vast majority of people will wear masks. I have a ton of masks. I have a ton of PPE. The idea would be that it will be as safe as we could possibly make it. It will be in a tent outside. The walls will be able to be opened up for ventilation. Like you have to balance the public health concerns against some important parts of our democracy, and that's not going to be easy for you. You know where I stand. I would like to see it in person. I feel that that's a very important part of our democratic process as a school district. But I get it if you want to vote the other way, you know, and we've been friends for a long time, Laura, and I'm friends with everybody on the board. And, you know, please vote your conscience. I've argued passionately for an in-person meeting, but, you know, if you come down on the other side, that's fine. You're voting your conscience, and it's a difficult decision. It's similar to opening schools, to having kids in class. You know, if you wanted to be as safe as you could be from a public safety standpoint, kids would not be in school. But because that hurts kids and you want to have them in school, you make decisions and do it as safely as you can. But those decisions are incredibly difficult. And I understand how everybody, you know, has their own opinions and wants vote your conscience is what I'm trying to say. I think we can do it safely on the 22nd in person, if that's what you want.
Okay, Dwight, go ahead. Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Laura.
Yeah, thanks, Andy. I'm glad you kind of laid that out, and we understand how difficult this decision is, and also that there's no real right answer. Either way, it's going to be, some people may be unhappy, and so we, like I said, we should vote our conscience. So the decision is between, maybe this is a question for you, Andy, the decision is between an Australian or to have it in person. Is there, I'm going to revisit this one more time to kind of come up the works. Is there any, one of my concerns is that, some people or someone may not attend strictly for health purposes, and that's a real shame that we would lose some of that, interaction with people having the ability to voice their opinion. Is there any type of hybrid or any way people can still vote by not being in attendance if we were to have it in person?
So it's my understanding that we can't do that as of right now this year. I know that some town meetings experimentally tried that with some folks who maybe were disabled and unable to attend in the meeting space that the town was holding their town meeting in. So I know it's in the works. I don't believe the technology is there, is the bottom line. And a lot of people are very hopeful that the technology will get there. But legally, I don't believe we can do that at this point. I'll check into that for you, for sure. But I don't believe that's a possibility. I know we definitely can't have an all digital meeting. Maybe there's a provision for folks who are disabled.
All right, thanks, Andy. Just wanted to throw it out there, see some options. The only question I had was, in Wardsboro, we used to have a tradition of having the meeting the night before town meeting, and obviously I don't think we can have it at night if it's outside in tent. But I'm not sure what time. I'm guessing it's 10 o'clock for the Wardsboro meeting. So if it runs late, we have to have ours in the afternoon. Or is it a possibility for us to have it the Friday afternoon, say around 3 o'clock after school lets out? Just gonna throw that out for some various times.
I think Andy said the meeting was Saturday afternoon.
So the meeting is Saturday afternoon. Jackie had mentioned, the town clerk in Wardsboro had mentioned the possibility of us meeting in the morning before the town meeting. But that was off the top of her head. My thought was, if you decide that you want to do something with an in-person meeting in Wardsboro, try and utilize the same tent. We can reach out to the Wardsboro Select Board, say, hey, when's the tent going up? Maybe we can put it up a little early, get a meeting on a Friday. We could have those discussions, but we haven't had them yet.
So
Thanks. Thank you.
So I think the important decision needs to be made. Are we going to meet in person or by ballot? And then if we decide to meet in person, we've got a week to kind of work out a time and stuff. But at least then the school district clerk knows where they're headed. We know where we're headed, and we can work out the specific details after that. So let's kind of stay focused. Do we want to meet in person, or do we want to meet or do we want to have the vote by Australian ballot? Bill?
Rich, you have a blue hand from board member Mark Schaber.
Yeah. Okay, Mark, you got to speak on this one. So is Kate or Rick, do you have anything to say? Any comments?
This is Rick. Rich, I am completely in agreement with what you said earlier. It's a big increase in the budget this year, and I really think it needs to be explained in person to people that are there. I just don't think we can get the word out properly about why we have such large increases through correspondence and email. So I would like to see us meet in person so that we can answer questions for folks. People don't seem to read things that come to them prior. They seem to come with questions to the meeting. I just would hate to see our budget fail because we've, put together a good budget, and it just needs some explanation as far as, why it has increased so much. So that's my feeling on it.
Okay, Kate, or you can shake your head no if you don't have any comments too.
No, because I'm definitely on the fence. I can see both sides of it all. I see the benefits of meeting in person, but then the safety. I do like the part that it's outside and in a tent. I think that or prospectively outside an intent, I think that element would be a huge piece of the puzzle versus like being in a conference room with unknown airflow and a lot of unknown people.
Yeah, and I think that would, if we do it in Wardsboro, we would have to do the attempt, because I think that's why the Wardsboro Select Board, from what I was told by when I talked with them, was because there wasn't really a place in Wardsboro they felt comfortable to do something like that. So yes, I agree. Mark, you can go next, and then Laura, you can have a second shot at it.
So there's one reason that our budget's, primarily one reason that our budget's going up. And I think that's easy enough to explain during our 2 informational meetings and through the brochure that we send out. So I'm not too worried about getting that one piece of information out there. If you're gonna put people who are not willing to wear a mask in a separate area, we're now talking about segregating people, which I think is completely inappropriate. As far as vaccinations and stuff go, we're talking about July before there are enough vaccinations available for everybody. We don't know who's gonna get it, who hasn't gotten it. There are issues with, there are people that have issues with the different vaccinations that are out there. And I don't think we can count on people having been vaccinated, nor should it be something that we can not require, but you can't make the assumption that people are going to be vaccinated. I think that there's a difference when we're talking about, never mind, I'm going to leave it at that. I'm going to make a motion if that's okay.
Well, I did recognize Laura.
Yeah,
So,
you have a blue hand with Laura.
yeah. Let me, if you don't mind, Mark, let's let Laura speak, and then.
Yep, go ahead.
Although I think he can make a motion.
Well, he can. I just asked if he wants to make the motion, he can, Laura, but I recognize you.
Thank you.
So if
Thank you.
give it up, you can say no, and you can let him make his motion. It's up to
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Richard.
Yeah.
So the other piece that I would maybe want to that I do want to introduce into this conversation, if we elect to go forward with it, is sound. I think that'll be important, particularly because we do need to have that social distancing and folks, separated. And we know that we have a sound problem already when we are inside in close proximity in a building with walls. So that's something else that I would also want to see. Do you see any problem with that, Andy? And I think, that could cost us, because we're not gonna be passing a mic around, right? So we're gonna have a couple of stations and that sort of thing if we were to go this route.
Laura, just as a point though, remember, it's not like we're the only ones who are doing a live meeting. So the town of Dover is doing a live meeting, as is the town of Wardsboro. So I'm sure this will all have to be worked out.
Well, I'm not sure that the towns of Wardsboro or Dover are thinking about sound. And so if they are,
actually
yes,
are.
fantastic.
Yeah, no.
And we don't need to.
That was a big discussion. Actually, one of the selectmen got very upset, I guess, at a meeting because he wasn't getting recognized on that for Dover. But yeah, I think again, we can work through all that stuff. I think we need to decide if it's going to be a live meeting or a ballot meeting.
Well, so
then we can put some criteria on it. And
so the criteria are actually important for me. Some of the criteria before I say yes, and so I'm working through those now. So, so just ensuring, and I apologize that I was not aware that the sound had been discussed. So I think I'm good. Thank you, Richard.
So did anybody else want a second bite at the apple? If not, Mark wanted to make a motion, and then we'll have discussion on the motion, depending on what he makes for a motion. Is, Mark, if I may, the moderator is, our elected moderator is Dr. Backus. Is he on? I didn't. Okay.
I
So,
don't see him, Rich.
okay. Go ahead, Mark. I give you back the floor, buddy.
If it's okay with you, I'm just gonna remind people what Dr. Backus did say when he was here last. Is that okay?
Sorry, I muted myself. Go ahead.
So Dr. Backus was very much in favor of an in-person meeting. He did say, though, if it was going to be an in-person meeting, he thought that we should be spaced 10 feet apart, not 6. So I'm going to move that we have the what year are we in? 2021 annual school board meeting via Australian ballot.
Okay, so for the upcoming 21 meeting, Mark moves to have it by Australian ballot. Is there a second to that motion? Okay, not hearing a second. I believe that makes the motion not move forward. Motion dies. Anybody else like to make a motion? Okay, well, if nobody's going to make a motion, then what I'm going to say is we had 2 choices here, either Australian ballot or a live meeting. So I would say that I'm going to make a motion, since I'm not hearing anybody, that we have a live meeting and that we work with the moderator, our school district clerk, and the board to make it as possible. I'm sorry, did I miss?
No, and they were left there.
Yeah. Richard, I would second that with a friendly amendment, if you would accept it, which is
Well,
that we have it.
I will withdraw my motion, let you make a motion if you'd like.
Well, thank you so much. So I will move that.
So hang on, Peter, I'm going to withdraw my motion.
Yes, I got that.
Okay, go ahead, Laura.
So I move that we have an in-person meeting on May 22nd, and that we work with the town of Dover, the town of Wardsboro, and our town clerk to ensure that and the moderator to make sure that all safety guidelines are well understood in advance and taken in the meeting.
So how about if it's a school district clerk does it instead of the town clerk?
Great. That's what I meant to say.
Okay, so we have a motion. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second that motion.
Okay, so we have a motion and Rick seconded it. Peter, do me a favor, read back the motion as you have it.
Move that the school directors meeting be held in person, May 22nd, working with Dover and Wardsboro town and board clerks and moderator to make sure safety guidelines are well understood in advance and implemented.
Yes.
Okay, so that's a motion and Rick seconded it. Hang on a second, Andy. I'll get to you third. Laura, you get first dib at it since you made the motion.
I think I've said what I have to say.
Okay, Rick, you get second dibs at it if you'd like.
Second dibs on the motion?
Well, to discussion.
Discussion?
Yes.
Oh, I just think with the increases that we have this year, that it's very important for us to be able to explain them. They're large increases. And I don't think people are going to understand it. They're just going to look at how much it's gone up and vote against it. So I think it's important that we have the ability to speak with people.
Okay, thank you. Andrew, you got third bite at the apple.
So just a minor point for the motion. It's the annual school district meeting, not the school directors meeting. This, I believe, would be a school directors meeting. It's the annual school district meeting for Peter's minutes.
Okay, thank you, Andy. Dwight, did you want to bite at it?
Yeah, the only thing I would say, she mentioned that the meeting, Laura mentioned the meeting would be on May 22nd. It's possible we could have it the day before. Maybe we should have just, I'm not, make sure it's, you didn't say that? I thought you said that. Okay, so it should be on or around May 22nd.
No, I said May 22nd.
You
and I
did say
meant-
May 22nd.
And I
So
meant May
that's-
22nd.
That's the
oh,
motion.
okay. Yeah, so I don't know
That's
if we
why
want to,
I asked Peter to reread it, so we made sure we were discussing the right motion.
okay, I just want to make sure, because if it's in the middle of the day, we might need a little flexibility. Like I said, possibly having it the day before, but that's something I would say.
Okay. Is there any discussion from anybody?
Richard?
Yes, Laura.
So I would just respond to that concern from Dwight. In Dover, we typically had our town and school board meetings in one day. And I know that in Wardsboro, typically they had been on 2 separate days. Well, I appreciate your concern. I also feel like we'll have people there and, hopefully they stay for the whole show. So that's why I said the 22nd. That's my explanation.
Yeah, just, thank you. I just, I know that we were just trying to decide on where to have it or how to have it right now. We weren't really deciding on a date, but that somehow got into the motion. So, but if we want to do the date as well, I guess we'll do that.
Okay, go ahead, Mark.
Just want to remind people that the reporting on the in-person meetings for town meeting day were a bit, not the reporting was abysmal, the turnout was abysmal. And most of them got postponed because they didn't have enough people. So I think you're limiting the number of people who can participate by having an in-person meeting. And I think that if we have not gotten enough information out to voters about why the budget's gone up prior to that meeting, then I think we've probably not done a good enough job.
Thank you, Mark. So I will say, I do know some towns did have a meeting and they asked to postpone indefinitely, like we used to do in Dover too. So some of that was intentional. And a lot of people didn't show up because they figured that's what was going to happen. But not all of them. So that's a good point. But it's also not, that's why we also want to put ours off and not have it in when we originally decided, try to move it out as far as we could. Is there anybody else with their hands up? If not, are you guys ready to vote? Bill, I don't see, oh, Rick, go ahead. Is his hand up?
Nope, you don't have any hands up.
Oh, because there's a hand in Rick's.
No, it just, the box went yellow because he probably was shuffling papers or something.
No, there's a hand I see on Rick's.
Rick Thorpe?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I do not have a blue hand for Rick Thorpe.
I'm ready to vote.
Okay, I'm sorry. Oh, is that like you're ready to vote hand?
I don't know what I got going on. I can't see it from your end.
Does anybody see the hand next to Rick's name? You guys got to be kidding me.
It's probably your
Oh,
cursor.
It's my cursor. I'm sorry. I got to stop doing these meetings, Andrew.
It's like the hamburger helper hand, man.
Yeah, well, don't worry. The hand's right next to me now. So all those in favor say aye, please.
Aye.
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 Hey, all those opposed, please signify so by saying nay.
Nay.
Okay, it's not, is there any abstentions? Since it's not a unanimous vote, I'm gonna have to do a roll call. So I'm gonna go kind of by seniority, I think. Rick,
Aye.
Laura,
Aye.
Dwight,
Aye.
Mark,
Nay.
Kate.
Aye.
Okay, so I count 4-1. The chair will go with the majority. So it's a 5-1 vote. All set, Peter? Okay,
Sure.
Andy, before we move on, what do you need for decisions from us? So we have a date. Do you want to check and figure out, talk to about a time and about whatever precautions, and we can do that at the next meeting, or we can maybe even put that off till April if you wanted to. Give me what you need for a timeline to get everything that you need.
So basically, I would have had maybe some more decisions for you tonight and a timeline that was more pressing had you decided to go with Australian ballot. But because it's going to be an in-person vote, we're good for now. When is your next meeting, though?
Next Monday.
The 15th?
Yes.
Okay. All
So
right.
when do you need
Yeah,
the
you're
warning
good
sign?
for tonight anyway.
When do you need the warning sign by, Andy?
So I would have needed it signed if it was going to be on May 4th on the 23rd. So since we are the 22nd, end of March, first week in April, maybe by the latest, your first, I got to have the ballots 20 days before 1, 2, but I don't need yeah, so I would say end of March would be plenty of time. I can give you a definite date next week.
Okay, why don't we do this, Andy? Why don't you and I talk towards the end of the week and see what we need to have so that we can put it together for the agenda. And we'll need to get the agenda out, Thursday afternoon, Friday morning. So maybe we can talk on Wednesday.
Cool.
Okay. Bill, would you do me a big favor and just send an email to Dr. Backus letting him know so he can be prepared too if he wants to come to that meeting, if he has any comments?
For the Monday, the 15th meeting?
Yes.
Got it.
Well, I guess too, the other thing that I could ask is the reason I said we need to meet on the 15th was I was just setting us up in case we were going to do a ballot vote too. Is there any reason why people can't meet on the 22nd? And then that gives us 2 weeks, Andy, and we can get everything finalized?
Yeah, that should work. Okay. So that should work. I may, just for your information, I may set up a meeting the following day on the 16th, if I can, or very soon, with the select boards of Dover and Wardsboro, who are more or less your Board of Civil Authority in your Articles of Agreement. They control the elections, and I'd like their permission to use the tabulator if we choose to do that. It's less critical now, but we may still want to go with that. So just for your information, if you wanted to attend that meeting, that might be going on, but otherwise you're good on the 22nd if you want to meet on the 22nd.
Bill, Tammy, and Matt, are you okay with that?
Yeah, I'll be there, but it is the NCAA basketball tournament, second round. So it'll be very disappointing to be there, but I will do my duty as you are my employers.
Well, you only come to one meeting anyway, so we may be okay without you, as long as Tammy or Matt are there to run the meeting.
Okay. Hey, I just figured I'd shoot it straight.
Cool. Hey, what about the board? Is everybody on the board okay? Laura, are you good with the 22nd versus the 15th?
Probably.
Mark?
I don't have anything right
Oh.
now, so.
Okay, Mark?
Oh, no, wait a minute. Yes, I do.
I'm fine.
Okay, thank you. Laura, keep looking. I'll come back to you, okay?
I do have something,
Okay.
which, if I have to, I could move it.
Okay, Kate?
I'm good with the 22nd.
Oh, I got two Kates. Dwight?
Yeah,
Yeah, 20 seconds, good for me.
I wondered how you were muted and I could still hear you, but I wasn't going to ask after the hand issue.
Vermont internet issues. Gotta love them.
Rick, go ahead. Are you good?
I'm fine, thank you.
Okay, if it's okay, then let's plan on the 22nd, and I'll talk with you ahead of time and see what we need.
You got it.
Okay, Andy, I think that will work. If that's good with you, as long as you're set, then we'll get together before that. We can see everything you need. Hopefully we can put it to bed for you on the 22nd.
Sounds good.
Okay, I appreciate the extra meetings. Hopefully we'll never do this to you again, okay?
Hey.
Rich, Peter Barris has his blue hand up.
Oh, there he is. Go ahead, Peter.
Yeah, my pink hand too. So there's no meeting on the 15th?
Yeah, I believe that's where we're gonna go to.
Thank you.
But we'll, obviously at the end of the meeting, we'll make a vote on it, so. Okay, so Andy, thank you. You can stick around if you want, but you don't have to right now. Thank you, buddy. Bill asked, and we agreed to in the beginning of the meeting to move from new business up after this article, full-time in-person instruction. And this is an informational piece. So go ahead, Bill.
Well, first, I just want to thank Matt and Tammy for making sure that parents were alerted that this would be on the agenda. And I appreciate parents and teachers coming out to hear what I'm recommending to the board, that I would like to start planning and communicating to families that we go to full in-person 5-day-a-week instruction starting April 26th. I don't do this lightly because we do have 15% of our families that are participating in school supported home study. And so that would cause a disruption for them. They would either have to choose to come into school, or they would have to register with the Vermont Agency of Education. The reason I'm bringing it forth to you all tonight is because, and as long as this decision gets to stand, I want to give those families as much transition time as possible. I make this recommendation for a few reasons. One is that we have shown since the beginning of school that we have appropriate mitigation strategies in place to keep our buildings safe during a pandemic. We will never be completely safe during a pandemic anywhere in the world, but I believe that we have shown that we have the protocols, the procedures, the cleaning. Our teachers are extremely dedicated, our school support staff, to keeping them very safe in school. Secondly, all teachers will have the opportunity to get a vaccine by mid-March. Before my recommendation of opening full-time in person on April 26th. In-person instruction is better for a majority of students. There are students that do really, really well. My son is one who hasn't stepped foot inside of a classroom in a year, and he's excelling. But for the majority of students, in-person instruction has not only good academic benefits, but social, emotional, and wellness benefits. We have repaired and refreshed all of our HVAC systems to the tune of more than $300,000 in River Valleys. And quite frankly, our teachers have spent 28 weeks of instruction teaching 2 separate classes, teaching both students that are remote and students that are in person. When we decided to go with this strategy in the beginning of the year, I don't think any of us could have imagined that we would have done it for 28 weeks, which would be through April 16th. Our teachers have done an incredible job. Our parents have done an incredible job, but I believe it was designed to be an accommodation for a specific period of time. And I believe we've come to the point on April 26th where we can open fully in person. That is not to discount that this will have different effects for different families, different challenges for different families. But I believe it is my responsibility to make this recommendation for the whole of the River Valley students.
Is that your recommendation?
I'm being realistic that I'm disappointing some people and some families and creating some challenges that are unique to each different family. I'm also creating opportunities for 85% of the families to go full person. The final 8 weeks of school during this pandemic could be incredibly valuable And I just want to make sure that we fully explore this opportunity.
Okay, so my second question to you is, I don't believe this is a board decision. This is your decision. The state told us that we could not, we had to close school last spring, which we did, and go remote. And the recommendation's now been, it's been up to us. So as a board, we agreed that we wanted to have students in the building. And the recommendation was that you could do that, but you couldn't do it full time. So I don't know if the board needs to make a motion or vote on this. I think you can just do that as a superintendent, just like we had said, if you find that school needs to close and go fully remote because there was an issue or an outbreak that you had that ability to do that. We had voted to give you that back in the summer, I think, before we started school. So I'm not sure, do you want to vote from us to allow you to do that, or are you just letting us know?
I am letting you know that this is my recommendation. I want to go forward doing this. And I believe that I needed to be unbelievably transparent to make sure that Matt and Tammy got it out to parents on Friday. And at the very minimum, I think that the board needs to hear from parents, both in the positive and in the negative, so that you understand the context in which I ultimately will be making this decision.
Okay. So is there any comments, Laura? I see you got your hand up.
So, while we don't need to weigh in, I think it is important for us to, if this is the case, to support Bill. If the board in fact does, I think that is important. I think, this is difficult. I think it will be challenging for some families. So, I am here with open ears, but what I'm hearing so far from Bill and what we have seen, I would like to hear from Matt and Tammy, but I'm certain that Bill would not have come forward with this if they had serious reservations. I would support this. I am so proud of our administrators, our teachers, Bill, you, our families, our students. This has been so difficult and so hard on our kids. And so if we can do this, I really strongly support us doing this.
Okay. Any other comments from anybody? I think, Kate, you got your hand up, and then Dwight.
And then you have Shira Crafts has a blue hand up as well.
Okay, so we'll make her third. Go ahead, Kate.
Yeah. So I've had some really good conversations with some fellow parents over the last couple of days since the news came to light, and there's definitely a lot of different things. And I hope that some other parents will speak up and just see what, share what they know and everything, because there's so many different perspectives to look at it from. But I think, on a very personal level, I know that my student does better when I am not coaching her through her education. So, but I know there's many different sides, so I'd love to hear from other folks.
Okay, thank you, Kate. Dwight, I think you were moving towards speaking.
Yeah, you got your eye on me. Just want to thank Bill for that's it's not an easy decision. I'm sure he's gotten some help with it, but I appreciate him coming forward and making that recommendation. It's much appreciated. I think the date makes a whole lot of sense too, because I would assume most school staff will have been vaccinated, and that will be probably a good 2 weeks. They say 2 weeks after the second vaccination, where it's truly safe for school staff, for them to I guess, for the vaccination to take effect or whatever they say. So I do though think that it's, it'd be nice to have some, even though it's his decision, it would be nice to have some board support for that. I think it would mean something to, it would send a message to the district that the board is either in favor or opposed to such a position.
And Dwight, remember, the board can make a motion to do that too.
I understand.
So I'm just saying, I think he can do it without us if he wanted to. Shira Crafts, where I don't know where you are, but you can go.
Hi.
There you are. Hey.
So one of my main questions would be, why would we have to, if we're going to do 5 days in person, why do we have to do away with the school supported home study altogether? Why cannot that not remain still an option?
So
and
we'll
also,
oh, I'm sorry. You
what's
want
that?
to answer that? You want him to answer?
Sure.
that?
Why don't
You
we?
can ask
Yeah,
your
let's do
second
one at a
question?
time.
Yeah.
Sure. It would simply be because then we would allow the teachers to focus only on one thing. Right now, and probably Matt and Tammy can speak to it better than I because they're in the buildings daily. But right now, we're basically asking our teachers to have a split focus and have a split intensity. And I would really like to have the final 8 weeks be highly focused and emerge from the pandemic in the best way possible. So the reason that I would recommend to end school supported home study at the same time as going 5 days a week would be to allow all school staff to focus on one thing instead of to have split responsibilities.
Shira,
Okay.
good with that?
Yep. I have another question
Yeah,
if I can
no.
keep going.
You've got the floor till you get all your questions answered.
Okay, so provided we go visit family or leave the state or such, what's happening then? Do we quarantine?
So it depends on what the rules are at the time that a decision is made by a family. But just like any decision that would made by a family that would be not in accordance with the governor's order, then us as the school would then have to communicate and educate what was necessary to do to follow that. If that did happen to be a quarantine situation for an individual family, I would assume it would be something very similar to being sick. So it could be that the work was collected for that day and it was available in the afternoon, even if it was for 7 days. But if a quarantine had to happen for an entire school or entire classroom, we could, if a second grade classroom had to go remote because the entire second grade classroom had to quarantine, we do have that tool available. But each different quarantine would have to be dealt with on an individualized basis.
Okay.
Was that it, or do you have more, Shira?
I think I just want to stress my concerns. One, I know I'm not in the majority here. I don't like the idea of her wearing a mask 24/7. I can get over that. I can handle her doing that. But I also don't like my rights being infringed on, being told who I can go see, when I can leave state. Those should be personal decisions. I don't think the state has any right in telling us what we can and can't do. I realize that's beyond your control. But I want to make it clear that I'm not going to stop living my life. I'm not going to live in fear because I'm not afraid. I know where I'm headed after here. So I'm not going to teach my kids to live in fear either. We're going to live our life. And if we want to leave the state to do something, we're going to do that. So I want to forewarn you that, okay, so Kiara might be coming to school, but that's going to mean anytime I make a decision to do something against the guidelines, she's going to have to quarantine. I'm also not going to have her tested. So it's not going to be a wait the 7 days, have her tested and shoot her right back in, because I'm not okay with that. This stuff is all so new. There's so much we don't know. I don't want to be a guinea pig and I don't want her to be either. So those are my main concerns. And also, you know, I was told a few months ago I had to make a decision and stick with it for the year, and I'm not allowed to change that. And now it's being brought to me that we're talking about changing it. So that's a little bit frustrating. I think, yeah, it would be great if we could all go back to the way life was. And I do think it is better for them to be in school, but not when our rights are slowly being taken away.
Okay. Are you set then, Shira?
I think so.
Okay, no, that's more of a statement. That wasn't a question, correct?
Yeah, that was more of a statement.
No, that's fine. Okay. I just want to make sure you got your chance to speak. Is there anybody else? Any other hands there, Bill, or?
I don't see any blue hands yet, but I would just remind anybody that they can always unmute themselves if they can't figure out how to do a blue hand. Your screen will turn yellow. You'll jump to the front of the line and we will get to hear you. I think it's very important to hear from you. And Shira, I absolutely appreciate you being unbelievably transparent. You've been consistent with me since I've known you for the last 12 years, I think it's been. And I always appreciate that. So thank you very much.
I would just
Shannon,
jump to the front of
Shannon
the
Wheeler
line.
has a blue hand.
Yeah. See, with the hand up, you get to go to the front of the line too. Go ahead, Shannon. Shira, you moved down one. Now you're even.
It's all how Rich sees people, I guess, on his screen.
Important.
I want to thank Bill for how he explained everything. I think it was really well, I know it was well thought out. I think he covered a lot of things. I do agree that it would really be nice to see the board make a decision to show that support. I like that we are thinking about going back to this. I know for my house, this is the right choice for us, is to be back in person 5 days. Wednesdays are a struggle. It's tough. It's not easy on anybody. I see how tired our teachers are, and it would be really great to get that back for 5 days a week. So it would be really great to see the board show that support too.
Thank you, Shannon. And I think when I said that we didn't have to vote, remember to just the administration has certain things and responsibilities. Like the board doesn't get to vote on which teacher is in which classroom or what happens a lot in the school. That's an administrative decision. I was just bringing that up because sometimes in the past, the board's gotten into things that we're not supposed to discuss and vote on, and they've tried to do that. So that's why I was just questioning. I wasn't sure because I almost thought the governor had mandated that we have back to school or get the students back into school. And again, that changes. I think it's every Tuesday when he has his press conference. So that was my only comment, or that was why I made that comment. But thank you, Shannon. I don't see anybody else in front of Shannon except Laura's back.
Laura's back, and then if you don't mind, Laura, just as a reminder, we did move this up in the agenda, so there might be people that are joining right now. So just as a reminder, we are discussing the superintendent's decision to want to open school on April 26th for full-time 5-day-a-week in person, and also combining that with the elimination of the school-supported home study that would end on April 16th. So just wanted to make sure that other individuals had an opportunity to weigh into that. But sorry, Rich, you can go to Laura. And then Mr. Dillon has his hand up as well.
Okay, Laura, did you get to speak once to this,
Yep.
right? Okay,
Yes.
So I'm going to bounce over you and I'll get you on the second round. Mr. Dillon, you're moved up in line too.
Thanks. I just wanted to say thank you to everybody who's trying to make the right decision. I know that there's a lot of earnest thought and effort that's behind this. I'm strongly in favor of going back to school 5 days a week. I think it'll make a big difference for the kids and a big difference for a lot of families. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark, I'm going to take you before Laura too, because I don't think you've talked on this subject yet. So
I'm just going to make it simple. I'm going to make a motion that we support the superintendent's decision to reopen schools or to go back to 5 days a week in person
on
a date that he sees fit.
Okay, perfect. Good.
Give me some flexibility.
Do I have a second to that motion?
I'll second that motion. This is Rick.
Okay, so I have a motion and a second to go back to in-person school 5 days a week, starting at a date as determined by the superintendent. Mark, do you have any comments?
Other than you've got somebody by the name of iPhone who just put their hand up.
Okay. Well, we're going to get through the motion part first. Rick, you have anything? You were second.
Well, I would just like to hear from as many parents and teachers as possible that would like to comment on this, because it's hard for me to make a decision not knowing what the public is thinking. So if there's anybody out there that would like to speak on this, we would really love to hear your voice.
Okay, Laura, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that we did also hear from Tammy and Bill.
Well, you did hear from Bill, but maybe you meant
Not
Tammy and
Tammy
Matt.
and Bill. Sorry, Bill. I'm tired.
So
Tammy and Matt,
iPhone person
sorry.
who
That's
now moved in the corner, can you, because you just says iPhone, we need to know who you are because we need to keep that for the minutes.
Hi, Rich. I think it's me you're talking about. It's Courtney Kinney, Levi's mom.
Hey, how are you?
Great. How are you?
Good. So go ahead.
I just wanted to throw our 2 cents in. We've actually been really thriving at homeschool. We've been dedicated. His test scores have doubled. Yes, we do understand that he's missing out socially, but we have been really working hard, and to just, kind of put all this hard work aside for the last 15 days of school or so, because we will be traveling for April break as well. It seems counterproductive to all the hard work we've done. So personally, we would like to just hang in through the end of the year, the way it's going, and then progress next year, fresh, hopefully everything back to normal, the new normal, and progress from there.
I hope so too, that it's a new normal next.
Yeah, and in addition, my son is around his grandparents constantly. So if he does have to go back, that's an added concern that we're going to face daily.
Okay, well, we appreciate that. Thank you. Is there?
Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, there you go. Your name's up there now. So is there anybody else? I guess Matt and Tammy, Laura would like to hear from you, but you don't have to speak if you don't want to, or it's all up to you guys.
Rich, we have a blue hand from
I see
Mr.
that.
Elijah. Okay.
No, I'll get to him after. Okay. Laura had a kind of a request. So we'll get to Elijah after we get to Matt and Tammy.
Hi, Rich. I really don't have anything to add to what Bill said. I totally agree with everything he said. He conferred with both Matt and I. I agree with all of his points about safety. We've done all the mitigation strategies here, the protocols, things have gone very well. And teachers are going to be relieved by this, by not having to juggle the remote learners with their in-person learners.
Okay, thank you, Tammy. Matt?
Agreed. As you can imagine, we talked about this as an administrative team, and we knew there would be, this would create benefits and challenges for different groups of people. And that's why it's important to have these conversations tonight and have everybody hear what's going on. I do think the big thing is, there's a large number of kids are now back in person. It's reducing to a smaller number who are remote. And so the question comes, what's the magic number to have the resources to run that remote program when we're all kind of seeing, the benefits of being in person and, what we're able to do with the kids when we have them in school. So that's why I'm in support of Bill's proposal. And but I also do understand Courtney's point. She is dead on. There are kids that thrive, and her son is one of them, and that's awesome. So this is a hard decision for the community for sure.
Okay, thank you. I got Elijah, then Mark, and then Shira again.
Hey, I just wanted to. Our family is very much in favor of this decision. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And I just wanted to add, for me, it's of course important to have the kids in school as much as possible. I think it's also important for some parents. I mean, me personally, this will mean, because of our family situation, that I'll be able to work full time now, just because I've had to not be able to work full time or at all for a lot of the last year. So I think that's also an important part of the equation too. So it's good for the kids, and I think it's going to be good for a lot of parents. So we're thumbs up on this.
Okay, thank you, Elijah. Appreciate it. Samantha, I'm going to get you third. Mark, you were next.
Yeah, so I would like some data points. How many students do we currently have that are taking advantage of the home study. That's one.
23 out of 151.
All right, thank you. Two, do you have any idea, have you polled the parents to find out how many of them would choose to keep their kids home still?
No, we have not done that.
Okay, and do you know how many of the teachers and staff are interested in getting vaccinated?
I know that across this, well,
Bill, we
no,
can't.
I'm
we
not going to
can't talk
talk about
that.
this. I'm just going to report out what was said at the press conference, which was 92% of all school employees responded that yes, they were interested in getting the vaccine.
Okay, thank you.
Mark, but that's something though, that's a personal decision, and that's something we can't ask and we can't. I mean, we can talk on a, but we cannot say, hey, which teachers in which building got it or whatnot. Okay.
Yep, I wasn't asking which ones.
Okay. Well, I mean, and the numbers, we're such a small group. It's the same reason why we can't, on a lot of the test scores, they can't give us scores by grades because of the, the cohort's so small. So I just want to make sure we didn't get ourselves in trouble. Shira, you are next, and then Samantha, we'll get you afterwards, okay?
I think it would be worth considering keeping both platforms. I think if you've got 23 kids still doing fully remote, you're probably going to find that none of them want to change. That's why they're remote. With it being whether they want to travel or they want to see family and not put others at risk or whatever, just taking it completely away, I really don't think is meeting your responsibility. You have a responsibility for our children, and just saying, oh, you're going to have to unenroll and enroll in something completely different at this point in the game, I don't think is fair for those kids. I think the schools have a responsibility to these kids, and you need to fulfill that.
Okay, thank you. Samantha, go ahead.
Hi, Rich. We've been doing this hybrid model with the remote and in person. I've had students remote for this whole year, as have many of our teachers. And it really doesn't matter how many students you have remote. It's a lot of extra work to ensure that the work is provided, that it's corrected, that there is a connection to the students. I personally am ready for 5 days a week. The kids are ready for it. I'm ready for it. And, keep in mind that in addition, Wardsboro, we're teaching 2 grades apiece. So we're teaching 2 grades apiece, plus we're also, some of us are teaching remote students. So I just want to voice my opinion that I'm ready for 5 days a week. I think it's the right thing to do after April break.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else who'd like to comment? Go. I see one more, April Richard, and then Courtney. Courtney, I'm going to hold off on you until we make sure there's nobody else. Go ahead, April.
Hi there. I just wanted to say that we have been using the school supported home study, and it has really worked for our family. I think that between some health things with us, it has really worked. I'm not teaching my children to live in fear as much as teaching them to be safe during a pandemic. But, I think that it's important to just emphasize, if you guys are planning to go back at the end of April, to maybe try to really, have as much outside time as possible. And still, I know in the beginning of all of this, we were focusing a lot on having outside classrooms and outside, just trying to be outside as much as possible. It's just the idea of my kids sitting inside with masks on being directed at it, it doesn't feel, as comfortable as, the whole year as we've been able to, take breaks when we need to and get our work done. And my kids have totally thrived with this model and not have to worry about going to go see great grandma and, because there are going to be families who don't share the same values and don't care as much about, being safe. So I kind of feel like I'm throwing my kids to the wolves, to be honest. But I also understand for teachers that it must be a lot of work, and I appreciate them. And I do intend to send my older son back at the end of April, but I am going to be unenrolling my preschooler because it doesn't seem like a good learning environment to be, wearing masks all day when you're 4, and it just doesn't seem like it would be logical in my eyes and for us personally. But that's where I'm at, and I've totally been so appreciative of the staff and everybody for the support that we've had using the school supported home study. So that was my 2 cents.
Well, thank you. We appreciate that. Courtney, I'm going to just ask you to hold on a second. Is there anybody else that hasn't spoken yet that would like to speak before we go to round 2? We good, Bill? Okay, Courtney, get round 2. Get to start it.
Well, I guess it's a question / point is when I got the email yesterday saying whatever was decided, we would have to unenroll from school. I started researching that on the Vermont Department of Education. First of all, it's a 2-week application process. And then it said currently they were 5-week backlogged. So there's no way feasibly to unenroll your kid and make homeschooling happen within the time frame we're all talking about between the end of April and the end of school year. Unless I'm incorrect, and I'm totally happy to learn more about it. But that's what I found online yesterday. So I was like, I don't even think that's an option.
There's 6 weeks between now and the end of April. So if there's
right, you're saying
you should have an extra week.
If the homeschooling ended, it would be the end of April. So between the end of April and mid-June, we would have to unenroll and become independent.
That's why Bill is telling you now, because if you intend not to do it, you would want to enroll now in the homeschool.
Okay, it's still a 5-week process,
Right.
though.
So you've got 6 weeks. That's why he's trying to get a decision made now, so that you have plenty of time to do that.
Okay.
So, yeah.
All right. And then, and my last point also was obviously, Rich, you know where I work. I work with a couple hundred people every weekend that don't follow quarantine, don't do anything. So I do wonder, when I'm asked the questions, have you been exposed to COVID when I drop my child off at school? It's a big, I don't know. I wait on people in restaurants all weekend long. And that worries me just personally.
I think it's something a lot of people have worried about in the resort district. So it's a very good point.
Okay.
Courtney. Are you all?
Thank you. All good. Thank you.
Okay. Mark and then Laura.
I'd actually like to ask Lori a question. If we have 23 students that disenroll, what kind of financial hit are we going to take?
There isn't, Mark, because they've already been counted. The counts are in the fall. So
Okay.
it's not a fine. That's one of the problems with the funding system is it's not the number that we get paid for has nothing to do with the actual number of students in the building. Go ahead, Laura.
Yeah, I do want to note that there are health safety guidelines that are in place for businesses that are operating, and the expectation is that the businesses are following those, that they are having their employees follow those, and that the customers are following those. And if there's a situation where we're seeing that those are not being followed, there is a process for dealing with that. We have, so that's it.
So Shira, hang on just 1 second, okay? So we've been through everybody who's wanted to speak once. We've been through some people who have spoken twice. You guys ready to vote, or do you want to keep going on this? Because we do have a pretty full agenda still.
Shira has her hand up. I'd let her speak.
Okay, so Shira will be our last comment. Shira, you get to close it out.
Oh boy.
Make it a strong one.
Well, I was wondering if I could get clarification. What it looks like to me is that my daughter's being denied education from the town of Dover. So how is that not the case? Can you explain what this homeschooling, I mean, if you ask me homeschooling, that means it's my job now.
No, so I can actually answer that, and Bill, tell me if I'm wrong, but Dover, the town of Dover is offering your child an education. You go up to the school and you get educated. If you choose not to partake in that, then that's your decision and you can get registered. You can go through the homeschooling program. It's just like we've had a lot of people that have students in school or don't have students in school, even though they live in town, but they choose to homeschool anyways. So we are not denying your child an education. We're saying, yeah, you can come to Dover School and be educated. That's where we're going. Bill, Mike, right or wrong?
You are correct.
But you're not, because you're taking away my rights. I have to wear a mask. She has to be socially distanced. We can't go see family. We can't leave the state, or I have to quarantine her. So you're not offering me what I signed up for when I enrolled her in Dover in the first place.
Okay, but I don't know what grade she's in, but we've always had in-person learning. This has just been in the last, since about a year ago that we've been doing this weird stuff. So,
So what is the law? Do I have the right to send her without a mask?
That's a good question.
We are bound to follow the AOE guidelines in operating the school. School districts are actually a subset of the state of Vermont. And so we are bound, and the board is bound to follow the governor's directives, of which the AOE guidance in wearing masks, having sanitation schedules, and having physical distancing as protocol and procedure are our requirements until the governor's executive order is lifted and the guidance is lifted along with that.
Okay, but me sending her there and you telling me I can't go to another state, I can't go to see family or whatever I want to do in another state, how is that okay?
All I can tell you is that we are going to follow the governor's executive order and the AOE guidelines that are attached to that executive order, and quarantine is a part of that.
And we're not telling you can't go out of state, you can't go visit other people from out of state. We're just saying that if you do that, you need to quarantine. We're not.
Okay, so how is that different than school supported home study? Is that not what she'll be doing for 2 weeks?
No, she would not be doing school supported home study. She would be doing something as in I am not in school. So it would be like if you took a trip 2 years ago to the Grand Canyon and were gone for 2 weeks. There might be some work that you brought with you. There might be some work when you return. It will not be a live remote like school supported home study.
So perhaps because she's a 6th grader, she's getting something different, because the only live thing she gets at all is a meeting offered 1 day a week that has not lasted more than, it ranges from 10 to 30 minutes depending on what she needs. That's all she gets. She's on her own after that. She gets the assignments, she's on her own. So I'm not seeing the difference, and perhaps with a younger grade level, maybe there would be a bigger difference. But for her, it's looking to me like the exact same thing she's already doing.
The difference would be that you would either send the student to school or that the student would be enrolled in AOE home study. And so however access is occurring in each individual classroom through school supported home study would end on April 16th.
Okay. Well, I mean, where I stand at this point, yeah, I'll send her grudgingly. I don't like the mask thing, but I'll do it because if it's important to other people, I'm going to do it. I'm not going to disrespect other people. When I'm in a public place where I can make that decision for myself, I will. But if I'm being asked to mask, then we will. But be warned, she's going to have to quarantine from time to time because we're still going to live our life and make our decisions. And if that means we need to quarantine to protect everybody else, that's fine. But that's what's going to happen. I'm not enrolling her in anything else. She's staying where she is, and that's what will have to happen with our family.
And I would just tell you, Shira, we would very much appreciate knowing so that we can do the best we can to deal with the individual situations of families. So we do appreciate that.
And Shira, I got to be really honest with you. We've spent as a board a lot of time talking about, in-person schooling and what's best for the kids. And unfortunately, I think the one thing that we've all kind of taken away from this, the whole board, and I think the staff and the administration, is that it's not an easy decision, and it's really a tough decision, and there's a lot of individualities, and what's good for some families isn't good for other families. And what we're trying to do is we try to look out for the majority, the best we can. But I do appreciate that you weighing in on it, because that definitely helps us and helps the board make a decision. And it really is appreciated. Please don't think that we're just blowing you off, or if we don't agree with you or we vote in a different way, it doesn't mean that you didn't make an impact or we weren't listening to you. Okay?
Yeah.
I just hope you understand that.
I do.
Richard,
Okay.
you have another
I
parent
know.
with a hand up.
Laura, calm down. I got this. I'm actually figuring this out. If you moved up and you had your hand up and now it's gone, are you all set, or you're all set? Okay. I see there's a Dana down on the bottom that has her hand up. I'm going to make you the last one unless the board tells me different, because we got quite a schedule tonight. So go ahead.
Sorry, I came in late. I just wanted to ask quickly, because I've got one at Kids in the Country. I've got one at Dover Elementary. We have traveled for Thanksgiving. We do come back and do the 7-day quarantine. We do the exam. It sucks. And we will continue to do that. My question is actually for Mr. Martin. So let's say we travel and then we do have to do the 7 days at home. Is it going to be like the same support that we've had? I'm like, hey, send Amelia's work home. Is it going to be the same format like that? Or how are we going to quarantine at home and not be are we still going to do the Google Classroom and stuff?
Rich, would you like me to respond to that?
Yeah, if you were Bill, please.
Yeah, it's essentially what you missed a little bit, Dana, earlier was the superintendent talked about that. Imagine that she were out sick and there would be material sent home. There might be some material on the Google Classroom. It would likely be less intense than what is currently school supported home study. That's what Bill is trying to say, is that running the school supported home study at the same time as 5 days is essentially making it a 6-day job, which we don't have the resources for that. So that's why he and we are faced with this problem, is if the teachers are teaching in person 5 days, they were using that 5th day to create materials to communicate with the remote kids and make those connections. And so that's the important piece of the balance here. Does that answer your question?
Okay, so you're all set then, Dana? Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Matt.
Hey, Rich, I just want to let you know that I have a parent who just emailed me and is having trouble connecting to the meeting. So I just would, if it's okay with you, I'll summarize what she's written. Or would you prefer to move the conversation?
As long as you identify who it is.
Yeah, I think that's fine. It's Becca Green. She is the parent of 2 Dover students, and she, like the Crafts and the Kinneys, have been extremely successful with the school supported home study and would really like to continue it. She feels very lucky that she's able to work from home. Her kids have thrived in the model. And she made another comment about how, a long time ago, we wanted kids and family to be together, and this is an opportunity to do it that works well for her and her family. Becca, I hope when you see the recording that I'm capturing what you have said here, but I will forward Becca's note to you, Rich, and to you, Bill.
No, actually send it to, if you don't mind, send it to Peter, and then he can include it in the minutes.
Perfect.
Okay. So
thanks.
I see nobody's cut in front of Matt, so I think don't have anybody new. So I'd like to, if we could, to have a vote. I'd like, Peter, can you just read the motion back so we're all fresh on what we're voting on?
Oh, wow. Let's see. Page. I'm going through pages and pages here. Move that the board support the superintendent's decision to return to in-person instruction 5 days per week, beginning on the date the superintendent sees fit.
Okay, and I believe if I go back in my memory banks, Mark made the motion and Laura seconded the motion.
Mr. Thorpe.
Oh, Rick Thorpe, I'm
Second.
sorry. Sorry about that,
Mr.
Rick.
Schauber
Didn't mean to do that.
moved, Mr. Thorpe second.
Okay, so are you all ready to vote?
Rich, I have one question. I hate to come in at the bottom of the ninth and ask it. My question's more for Bill. Are we suspending attendance policies through the end of the year? I
Nope.
just see this get mixed up. So if somebody has
Nope.
a team for 2 weeks,
No, we are not. I am under the same laws and statutes of taking attendance every day.
but I'm saying our elementary school attendance policies are still in place then?
They are.
Okay, that will be tough for some people that are going to take 2 weeks here and there. Just want to throw that out there. I hate to do it at the end, but
No, it's okay, man. We've been dealing with it all year long.
okay.
But the truancy is unexcused absences. If they call a school and say, hey, like in Shira's scenario, you know, if they decide to go somewhere and they need to quarantine, they're going to let the school know. They're not just not showing up. So that's, although it's an absence, it's not an unexcused absence, and that's where your truancy falls in, isn't it, Bill?
That is correct. So that would be the following of the governor's order, and through the requirement that you must do that. So they don't have any power to change that. So we could not call that an unexcused absence because they're following the executive order of the governor. So therefore we would provide work and it would be a quarantine excuse.
That was a good point. Thank you, Rick, in case some people were confused. If you guys are ready to vote on the motion to go back to 5-day-a-week in-person learning at a date determined by the superintendent, if you're in favor of that motion, please signify so by saying aye.
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 Okay, are there any nays? Are there any abstentions? Okay, it appears to me as though the ayes have it unanimously. The ayes have it. So the motion is, Bill, you can go back to 5-day-a-week for the 2 buildings at a date you determine. And I guess you're kind of giving everybody the notice that you plan on going back on the 26th, barring any changes from the Department of Education or the governor's mandates.
Yeah, a letter of communication will go out to parents tomorrow or Wednesday, so that they can all be prepared for the transition.
So if I can just say one thing then for any parents, and so that it's officially in the record, if they feel like they may not want to have their child come back to in-person learning, they probably should contact the EOE sooner rather than later.
All that information would be in the communication we send out tomorrow or Wednesday, and the point person will be the principal at each individual school.
Okay. So those people that decide they want to do that will get some assistance on that from the building administrators.
That is correct.
Okay. I think that should cover everything we had in discussion. I'm gonna say so the next thing, I don't know, I don't see.
Got my hand up.
Oh, go ahead, Peter.
Just a fine point. The board has just voted to support the decision of the superintendent. The board said it was not making that decision. So the motion was to support the superintendent's.
Peter, the motion is what was made and what was voted on.
Right. I mean, you were phrasing it differently a moment ago. Sorry.
No, I said that the superintendent has led us to believe that that's when he's going to do it, was on the 26th.
I will not argue, sir.
Okay. Is Lori here? Yes, I see Lori down below. Is that Lori Garland that's with us? It just says Lori. Yes, okay, I see her. Hi, Lori. Okay,
Hi.
so capital budget review, definition of a capital reserve fund. Oh, I also like to introduce too, in my lower left-hand screen way over there and with a happy birthday behind him is Greg Frost. For those of you that have never met him before, Greg is a pretty good softball player, an okay softball umpire, and he's our new facilities manager, facilities and transportation manager at central office. So he's part of Bill's team and works closely with all the administrators. So Greg, you want to wave and say hi? Is it your birthday?
No, it's my daughter's 20th birthday tonight.
Oh, okay. Congratulations to your daughter. Sorry we're taking all your time.
No, not at all.
Okay. So capital budget review, the first thing I had there was definition of the capital or reserve fund expense. So Lori, Bill, and I had met and with the two building administrators and Dwight. And one of the things is we noticed that if those of you that have been around for a while saw that we had a reserve study done by a firm, an engineering firm. Dwight had kind of spearheaded that for both buildings. But unfortunately, a lot of that had things that were more repair items and more maintenance items and just capital fund expenditures. So we were talking with Lori. So one of the things I'd like the board to do is just come to agreement on what we consider a capital fund expense or reserve fund expense versus an operational expense. So Lori, can you kind of go where you were headed from the bookkeeping accounting side? You and Greg maybe speak to that.
Sure, I'll start off. So we determined that anything that's a yearly cost should obviously be in the operational budget. And then the dollar figure, it really depends on what the project is or the item is, but just a basic rule of thumb, and it's based on the grants. Capital is $5,000. So anything that was $5,000 or more, we moved into a capital fund to be paid out of by the capital fund, and anything lower than that should be operational. And Greg did a great job of mapping out a 5-year operational budget, which is great because he took some of those items off of that capital needs and put them on that operational, and then also mapping out the capital budget over the next 10 years, is it? I think, Greg, it was something like that. So that's where we came up with our definition. Does that answer your question, Rich?
Yeah. So does anybody in the board have any questions about that? And is there anybody that disagrees with that? Go ahead, Mark.
My only question is, I thought the state board had a rule that defined what was capital.
The state board rule is the bid rule, and it means when something needs to be put out to bid, and that's $15,000.
Okay.
So it's just a little different definition.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, usually things like painting, there's certain things that, like with the property management side of the business, is that they don't, a lot of the associations and stuff don't want to have as a capital expense. You know, they say that it should be operational, and then there is some definitions with the IRS on a capital expenditure, but we don't fall under that. So what I want to do is just establish something so that in the future, Greg and Lori, Matt and Bill and Tammy all kind of knew where the board was coming from. So that's why I wanted to, kind of like when we're doing, whether we have a live or ballot meeting, is I wanted to first make sure that everybody's good at that definition. So I would like to see a motion made to that effect. And then maybe Lori, if you or Greg or Bill or Matt or Tammy could maybe, I don't know if that should be a policy of the board to help you in the future, or if we just made a motion so that you could use that going forward. So nobody would have to come to the board and say, hey, look, we've got to do this project. It's A, B, and C. Is that coming out of the capital, or is that coming out of operational, or where should we put it? so that you know that in the future?
We could come up with a capitalization policy. I'm not sure if River Valleys has one currently or not. I would have to look at your policies. So
I know we never had one in Dover either. Rick, did you ever have one in Wardsboro?
No, we didn't have an actual policy about what would be classified as capital and what would not, to my recognition, unless it happened at some point after I was in between boards. I'm not aware of there actually being a policy.
Go ahead, Lori.
So WCSU has a policy, and it's actually, I'm going to be bringing it to the WCSU board the next time they meet to change it, because it actually is $1,000, which is, our auditors have said, is ridiculous. So River Valleys could fall under, and correct me if I'm wrong, Bill, that policy when we change it.
Yes, it could. As long as they match the goals of the River Valleys board, match to what the WCSU board would pass, yes.
Well, the other thing is, and I thought it was interesting that Mark raised his hand. I thought he was going to say it, but he didn't. I was thinking that, Mark, is that something you and Kate maybe could look into for us?
Yeah, I'm actually looking at the VSBA's model policy right now to see whether that's something we may want to look at.
Okay, so why don't we charge you guys with doing that, if that's okay? I know you have a list, so if you can fit that in your list. And then Lori, for right now, if we just voted for that, or are you comfortable with that? Or you just, if nobody disagrees, you'll use that until you hear differently? How do you feel comfortable getting that taken care of for you?
I think that I'm comfortable, and Greg, or if he's comfortable, just going with, this is our rule of thumb for right now, and then let's wait until to see whether we want to come up with a policy or not.
Are you good with that, Greg?
Yeah, I completely agree with Lori. I am a little hesitant to the idea of making it a steadfast rule of like, okay, if it's 5,000, it has to be over. There are times where you may estimate a project to be 4,500 and you don't realize that, cost increases have happened and now it's a $5,500 job. And then, if it's a hard and steadfast rule, all of a sudden is maybe someone asking, hey, well, why was that done here and not here? You know what I mean? And it may be creating confusion in the future, but as a rule of thumb, I think it's what we used in creating it.
So and again, the board, when you make a policy, the board is the only one that can change it. So, if the policy is it's got to be a capital expenditure, if it's over 5,000, and you guys come up and say, hey, we got this project and it's going to be 5,200, the board can say, okay, we're going to treat it as an operational, but that's a case-by-case decision. And I think the only reason I was suggesting we have a policy is, and that way you guys can you have your kind of your marching orders. So when you're putting a budget together, if you see something that may be a little, on the border or whatnot, I think then you can come to the board for guidance. I was just trying to save you guys from putting something together and then having the board say, oh, well, we thought it was 5,100, or that was the only reason I was suggesting a policy to make your guys' life easier. And
I'm into it.
Are you okay with that? Okay, go ahead, Mark.
I think I'd have a problem with just setting a dollar amount, because you could be looking at a $4,500 paint job or $35,000 paint job. Either way, they're not a capital expense.
Well, and then that's something you can put in your policy. We're not voting on a policy tonight. Tonight, we're just going to kind of agree on a move forward and just for this budget. But we're going to have to eventually make a determination to make it easier on them, so they don't have to come and give us a whole list of items and say, okay, which one's going where. Lori?
Capitalization policies are also for the asset collection or what you consider an asset also. So, we're talking projects here, but capital reserves also buy things. And if it's over a certain amount, then and it's considered capital, then it goes on your assets and is depreciated differently. So I think that probably the policy needs to be looked into more before, like Rich says, we're not making a decision on it right now.
And then I'm hoping that, Mark and Kate, who do our policies, will, discuss that. And then Mark will bring it to the board, and then we can go forward and come up with something that everybody's happy with. If you're good with that. Are you okay with that, Mark?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I'm sure we will reach out to Greg and Lori on this.
Okay. And also make sure Tammy and Matt too, because that kind of affects them when they start building budgets with Bill. And did everybody see Bill get that 3-point shot in there talking about the NCAA tournament? Okay, so if we use right now, if nobody has any objections, then Lori, let's continue on for now with the $5,000, and it's not a yearly expense.
Sure. So you want to go right into the building lists that we created, or that actually Greg created. So if I can have sharing rights, I'll share it, and then Greg, you can talk through it. How about that?
Okay.
We'll tag team it, man.
You are now the host, Lori.
Why, thank you. Okay, nope, that's a different thing. Here we go. All right. All right. So can everybody see that okay? You want me to increase the size if I can?
That's the tax form.
All you see is the tax form?
Yeah.
Okay, let me try again. I could see it, but there we go. How's that look?
Perfect.
Okay. So this is the operational budget. We'll talk through that first.
Sure. So what you'll see there is we have Wardsboro on top of Dover with the 2610 and the 2630 budget lines. One thing you'll notice is that is probably new to most of you is the HVAC PM contract, the proactive maintenance contract. It just seems like we put all this money into all this new HVAC. We really need to upkeep and make sure we're taking care of it and upgrading it and keeping on top of the air quality in our buildings long term. So we have reached a deal with Alliance on all the different schools to provide services for that. And then you'll see some filters in there. There's also some additional COVID supplies that are some things that we bought this year that, again, we are anticipating that we will still be using in the fall. So that would be there as well.
Greg, can I just interrupt you for a second? Lori, can you zoom in on that? It's not really legible.
Yeah. I am trying to find the Zoom on here. I'm on a Google Doc. Does anybody give me a hand?
Is it under up on the left where it says 100%? You're almost on it. Oh, you're almost on it. Right under view.
Thank you. Yes. Great. Is that better?
Yes, thank you.
And Lori, could you also go up a little so that I don't need to see River Valley operational, but I'd like to be able to see all the number. Oh, you can't. Okay, forget it.
It's a laptop screen. They're smaller. They don't let as much on there. So you'll see, for say Wardsboro, you have some interior painting in 23. You still see it, but it's on there. There are actually some hidden things that we just didn't put on there to show you. There is actually budgets for all those years. And really, it all just came off the CNA that you all had done. I went through and pulled everything off of there that was there, marked up the things that had been done. If it hadn't been done and it was between 18 and 22, which is what we're coming up on, then I tried to get it into 22 and 23 just to get, obviously if those items were deemed by the CNA to be done, then let's make sure we're getting them done in the next couple of years to try to catch up and keep up with that. As for Dover, you'll see the same thing there. There's some timber curbing, and also Matt and Tammy went through the CNA and they kind of highlighted what were their like must-haves and what could be pushed out, and that was kind of where we ended up with these things too. Some kitchen counter replacement, replacement of a couple of lunch tables, and the water filtration, the water filter bulbs. I'm still working on learning exactly how that UV water system works. I don't know if that will be an annual cost. That would be kind of like preventative maintenance and just your general repair improvements. If that's something that will be annual or not, I'll definitely get back to you on that.
So, Greg, so there's, Lori, if you keep going up a little again, there's both places, both the Wardsboro and the Dover, you had general maintenance.
Like right here.
Yeah, there, and then you had one for Wardsboro and one for Dover. So do you know what makes up that number, or is that just kind of based on the averages of the last few years for things that are unanticipated?
Yeah, I think that I didn't come up with those numbers. They were there. I was reviewing their budgets and what they were kind of spending their money on, and it was your plumber call-ins. Okay, this broke and we're having it done. We are going to work toward getting a kind of it set up where we will break that number down eventually and be able to say this is what fills it, because you've got your fire extinguishers that need to be done, your alarm system test. If someone has an elevator you might have your contract with that there. So yeah, I mean, I think generally that is just their like, this is when we got to call a plumber, have to call an electrician, have to call the Alliance in because this isn't working or that isn't working.
Okay, so just so everybody on the board understands, so what you're going to see is in the budget that Lori gives us that we're going to publish, there's going to be this 2610 code, and the number that shows is going to be the 28128, not all those individual numbers. So this is how they got to the 28128. Is that correct, Lori and Greg?
Yes. Yep.
That is correct.
And actually, it'll be like 30,000 because, or almost 40,000, or a little over 40, because you'll get the supplies total too. Because though it's a different account number, it's the same 2610 function.
Right.
Okay, so then what's a 5431 after it, and then you got 5611? Because isn't that
those are our like account numbers. Those are our account numbers. Supplies is 5611, and non-tech repair is 5431.
Okay, but those aren't separate lines on the
they are separate lines, yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, yeah. So so under 5431 2610 function, we'll see for the Dover 28128, correct?
Yes.
And then under the 5431, under the 5611, we'll see the 12 or whatever.
Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
Does everybody on the board understand that from when we look at the budget?
Are they broken out by building like that in the budget?
They are, but you don't see them. They actually are rolled up, so it's more like this.
And remember, she still has to report separately, for all the wonderful things the legislature did. It made us combine, but then they want everything reported separately. So it's, like, not only do they want their cake, they want to eat it too and not let anybody else eat any.
For federal reporting, you have to report by school.
So the only reason I wanted to bring that up is because under the operational budget that we've discussed several times and we agreed we were happy with, we now have to make changes in that. And Lori, I think we're going to talk about that later on. But
correct.
People are aware. So is everybody good with what Greg and Lori and Matt and Tammy came up for operational expenses? Does anybody have any questions about anything in the operational expenses?
Just a comment. It would be really great if we could get these spreadsheets so that we can review them ourselves ahead of time instead of having you drive. It's really hard personally for me to just follow this whole thing because you're driving it up and down and I can't really see anything. Just a comment. Thanks.
And Rick, I'll take total blame for that because, you know, we met the middle of last week and they had sent it to me and Bill had asked me, I noticed an email just before this meeting that he said, can I send this out to everybody? And I never responded because I didn't see it. I had a pretty bad weekend. So I'm really sorry, but that is my fault. It was meant to go out. We were trying to get everything done so it could have gone out on Friday.
Also,
Just a comment. It's really hard to kind of look at the numbers on a spreadsheet and make sense of them when you can't see the whole sheet. And that's really just a comment. Thank you.
And I totally agree with you. That's why I asked them on the next sheet to make it one sheet instead of being several sheets. So I totally agree with you. Mark, did you have a comment?
Just a request that neither Kate nor I were on the board when those capital reserve studies were done. If you could send us copies of it, I'd appreciate it.
I thought we did after the last meeting.
Nope, never got it.
Bill, can you make sure that happens, please? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
You may even have it before the end of the meeting, Mark. And I tell you, I guarantee you, if you can't sleep, read it because it'll put you to sleep. Okay, if we're good on that, let's go. Can you go to the reserve expenditures for this year?
I'm going to try to take off some of the freezing and then maybe it will be easier to read. Okay, so now now I'm just scrolling and you're seeing everything that might be a little bit easier to read.
Well, why don't we do the Wardsboro one first, Lori?
Okay, so I'm going to zoom right in on it. There we go.
Yeah.
Okay, so this was Wardsboro's capital budget. This is after Greg moved things around. The account code, this is actually the capital fund number, just so everybody's aware of that. And there are some items here. Well, Greg, you can go ahead and talk about that.
Sure, no problem. Yeah, for this year, knowing the numbers crunch we were dealing with, we tried to only keep emergency items in there. To me, an alarm panel and emergency lighting are just things that we had to keep in there. Everything else we pushed out. I tried to keep things kind of coordinated. If there was something that was similar to something that was at one another schools, I tried to keep those in the same years. If there were things that were kind of both the same type of unit, like you'll see the heat recovery units, ceiling mount heaters and air handlers are all in the same FY25. Again, that way it's just kind of, you have all the money in there, but it's all similar work. It's hard if you have a lot of different projects going on and you have, painters and contractors and, and builders and boiler techs, and they're all kind of fighting over the same spaces. So that was kind of the idea behind, kind of where the placements were. And some of it was just based on the recommendations within the CNA. So that was kind of how and where I put things.
So the long and short of it is, for the Wardsboro building, you're looking to expend 23.2, and it's on two things that are fairly important: the emergency lighting and the alarm panel, the fire alarm panel, I think.
Yep.
Okay, is there any questions on the Wardsboro building?
Rich?
Go ahead, Mark. Yeah.
With the alarm panel, you asked the main question I was going to have which is whether that was for the fire alarm, but is it not functioning and just due for replacement, or is it actually not functioning properly?
Yeah. Being new here still, I'm not 100% sure. My assumption is it's probably similar to the one at my previous employment, which was it functions well enough, but you probably, my guess is it's probably long since it's past its lifespan, and you can't modify it, you can't change it. The one we had at Oak Grove where I worked before here, we couldn't do anything to it. They actually had to bring, when we took all the information off of it, we had to bring a special computer in that ran really, really old Windows just to pull all the information off of it. So my assumption is it's probably just long overdue.
Do these get
Mark,
Inspector,
yeah, I was gonna say, Mark, I'm gonna put my other hat on. You have,
that's what I was gonna ask you to do.
yeah, you have to have an annual inspection. So if it failed inspection, we would have had to get it fixed before this. So it doesn't, with the annual inspection, so it means it operates and it's doing what it's supposed to do. The problem is, as it gets older, there's going to be a time when it's not going to pass inspection, and then we don't have a choice, and we'll have, the fire marshal's office will put in a bunch of things like, they'll have to have a fire watch, or, the school will have to employ a second person if there's more than so many kids in the class. So it could become a real headache for us in the future.
No, understand. I was just trying to figure out what state it was in.
Yeah, no, and that was a really good question. I was going to bring that up myself, that, they do get inspected. So nobody should feel like right now in Wardsboro, it's not safe because the fire alarm panel needs to be replaced. It's just when they get so old and then you need parts, you can't get them anymore. So then that's when it becomes a real issue.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That was the point I was trying to make.
Yeah, and along that same line, Rich, one thing I found with emergency lighting too is a lot of times they run one big unit with a bunch of big NiCad batteries in it that feed 2 or 3 other units, and they run halogen lights, and so those NiCad batteries never last more than a year anyway. So we would look to go to LED fixtures with their own lithium battery that has like a 5-year lifespan, so you would get way more life out of those units. So there is some, there is some thought process there too, that we're looking at, newer technology and more efficient technology.
Okay. Mark, you're all good, sir? Okay, is there anybody else that has any questions on the Wardsboro building? Then Lori, can we look at Dover, and Greg, give us the overview there, please?
Yep. Yeah. So Dover had a long list, and they had a lot of things that were, you'll see some of them say FY20 or FY21. So those I didn't want to push out too far, but in working with Rich and Matt, there was nothing that was, hey, this has to be done this year. And so with that in mind, we basically started that one at FY23 and pushed out from there. So you'll see that. Initially I think we had the boiler in here, but Rich was quick to point out that there's 2 boilers there, and so that there is a backup in place. So we're not at a situation where if one of those fails, we're really out of luck. So I think the key here was to keep the initial number down so that as we start to save money in the fund, it builds faster and quicker.
Go ahead, Mark.
So one question, which I just can't read, on line 30 and 31, the roof covering, what are the words after those?
Sarnafil, PVC, and EPDM.
What is FPDM?
It's a rubber membrane.
Is rubber,
Okay.
yeah.
And then I believe I know, but what are cabinet heaters? Line 38.
Those are the heaters in the classrooms, Mark. There used to be a heat when the school was first built. And
the
then,
PTACs.
Yeah, and when we did the addition, they got converted from electric over to hot water because we put the boilers in. And then then we built the solar field where we can get our electricity a lot cheaper. So we'd already converted them, but those cabinets are old, and like the blowers in them that are still utilized from the original 1971 installations. Matt can probably speak to it. They're not as reliable, and so eventually we should really start replacing them to get better technology, like Greg was saying, maybe save ourselves some money.
Mm-hmm.
Matt,
yeah, the view I always have with those too is when they're from the 70s and whatnot, right? You've gotten your lifespan out of them, like they put them in the hopes of them running for 30 or 40 years. And I would say we've definitely gotten our life out of them. And we're at that point where you're either going to start to pump a lot more money into them, to continue to use that older unit. It's going to burn up motors more. It's going to burn up belts more. It's going, it's not as efficient. So it's great to look toward moving them on. Sorry, Matt, go ahead.
No, I was just asking Matt if he had he had any other comments on those. Again, it's nothing we're looking to do this year. We, because that would be down the future. And then, again, as we get closer, Greg will get a better idea of numbers for us and, and what we need to do and if we need to do them all or how we do that. Remember, we're just presenting for this year, but we want to kind of see where we flow in the future. So when we set up the budget and figure out how much we should put into the budget every year towards replacements, that was one of the reasons why we had to start moving some stuff around so that one year we didn't spend $10 million and then the next year not spend anything, and the year after that spend $1 million. So
yeah.
Are there any other questions on the Dover capital?
Just a quick question, Rich.
Go ahead, George.
Thanks. It looks great. I hate to see a year where we don't do any work in the building. I'm wondering, if we can, maybe it's time to do that gym floor you've been talking about for 15 years and do it this year rather than wait a year. But we can talk about that when we talk about the annual contribution. But it'd be nice to have something done this year rather than nothing at the Dover School.
Yeah, and the only reason I was really for trying to minimize expenditures this year, and I understand that, if we do it next year, it would have been a little bit cheaper this year. It's going to go up. The problem is we've been for a few years now saying that we need to kind of figure out how much to fund it. We haven't, as River Valleys, we have never put any money into the reserves except for that money that came from the two schools, Wardsboro and Dover. And we put an initial amount of 200,000 in, and we haven't funded any other money since then. And my only issue is I think we owe it to the voters to present to them a plan that's more than this coming year. And this kind of is like a placeholder. And if we hadn't been having, spending a lot of time in meetings about whether we have open school or remote school or all that other stuff, and Lori wasn't trying to get its grant money, and we weren't trying to get ventilation systems done, which again, both buildings had a lot of ventilation work done, and we got a new car this year. There has been a lot of stuff done. I think we really need to kind of sit back and plan together, let Lori, Greg get their feet under them, and then do a deep dive. We talked about that under new business, and then come up with a more realistic budget. And budget numbers. So I would advocate, and again, I'm just one person out of 6 of y'all, that we go with a minimalistic approach this year and not try to spend too much on capital budgeting items. Do the stuff we have to do, and then next year, over the summer, be prepared for next year to put together, the wish list and start moving things forward. And my only other point is we were talking a little bit ago, although we budgeted money for the boilers, everybody said, oh, after 10 years, you should always replace your boilers. But we felt like the boilers are running. Efficiency isn't going to be that much different. What reason is there to spend the money now just because it's a certain year, it's year 10 or year 12 or year 20. But as long as we've been putting money away, if that boiler goes mid-year and we have to replace it, then we don't have to try to figure out where we're going to get the money, because a lot of that money's already been saved. And remember too, that when we do a capital budget, we're only talking about the year, and we only get approval for the year that we're asking for the FY22.
Right.
FY23 and the years are just for planning purposes. It doesn't mean that in whatever we show this year can't change the following year.
Yeah, I see that on the contribution. So this year it looks like, the contribution is 20,000, and then next year it's 70, and it's going to level off at 70. I'm wondering if we could, that's kind of a big jump. If we, if we're going to be asking for the money each year, if we ask for, say, 50,000 this year, then it would be, 40,000 next, or 40,000 this year. In other words, the jump won't be as great.
And again, that's, oh, go ahead, Lori, I'm sorry.
No, I just wanted to know if you wanted me to switch over to what Dwight's talking about so everybody can see it.
So Dwight, let's hold off on that for a second.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
Is everybody okay with Dover? And if so, then let's move. Go ahead, Greg.
Rich, real quick, I just, on your gym floor, I feel a duty to tell you this. So you'll see that it went up quite a bit from the number you all have been using at 65. So when we recently had the water lines break, we had some asbestos testing done, and part of the testing, the deal that we had with the company that we brought in, was they were willing to test, they, included X amount of tests. And so we took advantage of that, and we had a lot of things tested while she was there. And one of the things we had tested was the gym floor, and it came back positive for asbestos. Now, it doesn't mean anything as far as like anyone playing in there or anything like that. It literally is, it's the underlayment under the gym floor, but it would be an asbestos abatement issue, and it would be expensive. We had a classroom done this past summer, and it was almost $10 a square foot.
For the abatement.
Yep, for the abatement. So that is where that came from. We did look at the flooring that's in there, and though it looks to be in pretty rough shape, it has a really thick top layer. I honestly believe you could sand that down, and with proper gym care, get it, in gym floor care of scrub and recoat, you could probably get another solid 10 years out of that and probably only spend between $8,000 and $12,000. So something to think about.
And to be honest with you, Greg, I've been on the board for 20 something years. And before I got on the board, when they voted to do the addition, and there was 2 no votes and then a yes vote, that had replacing that floor was in the original vote.
No way.
As was new cabinet heaters and new windows and all this other stuff. In the first 2 votes, it got voted down. And then ever since I've been on the board, every couple years that gym floor gets brought up, and I'm waiting to one of 2 things happens is that the town takes over the gym for us, and then they can replace it, or I die, and then you guys can just do what you want to do anyways. So if we're all good with Dover, then I'd like to move on to the funding for the reserve. So Lori, can you go there? And then Dwight, this is where I think your point needs to come up. And just remember that 20 is just a number I pulled out of the air on a Saturday afternoon, getting frustrated with the Excel spreadsheet that wouldn't do what I wanted it to do. So Lori, I think you came up with the 70, right? Because I had 20s across.
Well, between Greg and I, yes, I think we were somewhere 65, and then I went to 70. So just let me talk through this sheet so everybody can understand the function of it. So this of course is your $200,000 that is in the capital reserve, building reserve right now. This is what we're talking about for which, this number can change, but just as a placeholder, that's what we put. This is based on the spreadsheet that we just saw, which was only Wardsboro's capital expenditures. And then of course your balance, which becomes your new balance for the next year. So it's just a rolling fund that goes from year to year to fund. As we get down to some of the bigger years, 2030, this is where you start to see, that money has to come from somewhere. So that's how this works. And I think, the annual contribution is what Rich, you were just talking about, has not been either put on the as a separate article or into the general fund budget as of yet.
Go ahead, Mark.
What happened to Rich?
Keep going, keep rolling. Or were you at a pause?
I was pausing, yes, for somebody to jump in.
Lori, can you can you send us this a link to this spreadsheet? But more importantly, would it not make sense for us to set a floor for this balance, so that we always had the funds to do our roof, let's say, something that could come up. So a floor of, 150, 200,000, something along those lines.
Certainly you could do that. I think this year is probably not the year to try to fund it to that level, because what you're really talking about is adding another 150,000 to it, right? So that
No, that would be adding, no, because if the floor was 200, we're basically there.
okay, but I mean, to keep what it sounds to me like you're saying is that we want to keep, basically 150,000 that we're never touching. Is that what you're saying or not?
No, not necessarily.
Okay.
But that we are always funding it to a minimum of that amount. So that, in years down the road in 27, where it's, 38,000, that by the time we get there, we need to have it built up enough so that the end of that year, we're going to be at 200,000 or whatever floor we would set.
Mm-hmm.
So, just from the original capital budgeting that we started in Dover back in the 80s, we actually used to do it on a 10-year cycle, and the 10th year was always a zero. Because remember, we never get to that 10th year because we're not voting for 10 years. We're only voting for a year. So every year it gets adjusted. And the reason we changed that is because things like the ladder truck at $1 million, if it's a 25-year vehicle, it doesn't show for 15 years, and all of a sudden it shows there. So we kind of didn't get as worked up about the ending number, because remember that whatever we decide for a donate or what we're going to put in is going to change every year based on where the budgets are and where actual numbers come out as. So I don't think, I've never seen setting a floor. What I have seen is that every year that gets adjusted, and we try to keep the annual contribution somewhat steady so we don't have ups and downs, we don't have spikes. And we know that in 10 years, probably that $70,000 is not going to be the right number, but at least for the next 3 or 4 years, it probably will be the right number, or whatever number that is that we decide. And remember, the 70 isn't for anybody. It's not for, we're not voting on it. We're not guaranteeing it. We may wind up next year because of the student count. We may have be able to reduce our budget by $1.5 million. And we may not want to do that whole reduction. And we may ask the voters to, increase the contribution, both capital funds, and fund it with just the surplus, or the difference between what the tax rate was this year and what we propose it to be next year. So the one thing, although we show a chart out there and that just helps us for knowing the right numbers, it doesn't mean when they approve the capital budget that they've approved anything beyond FY22. Is everybody good with that? Understand that?
Yeah, and just so you know too, the 70 number was the number I had to come up with to get as close to a 0 at 10 as I could. That's really where 70 came from. What you could do, Mark, I would think, is you could try to set, if you wanted to set some sort of a policy, like a protective, policy to know that we're always committing a certain amount of support to it, is say something like, hey, we always commit to a minimum after FY22, we will never go less than 50, right? You know what I mean? Knowing just how much more expensive things are to be getting done, and looking at how many projects on there are around 50 and 60,000, so then you can say as long as we know we're putting 50 or 60 in, there's almost nothing that can happen that we can't absorb,
The only reason I'm a little against setting a policy on a floor or a number is because it changes every year. And there are years that we can go less. We may be able to go less. We may choose not to. But again, if we come into another year like this where our secondary tuition goes up $1 million, we may, choose not to fund it at the level we have in the previous couple of years and suggest 1 year lower that we have to, make up the following year. Because it's not as simple, again, is on the town side. It's pretty easy because we know the penny's going to raise at least what it raised last year, if not more the following year. We don't know how much we're going to get and what we're going to have to make our taxes there's a lot more uncertainty on a school side than there is, on a town side. So, I mean, I have no problem putting more in when we can afford to put more in. And Mark, I think your argument's very valid. I just don't think it has to be a policy. I think it's just something we discuss every year, and we come up with the number that we feel is really appropriate each year.
Yeah, if I used the word policy, I apologize. I didn't literally mean a policy. I meant a rule of thumb.
Yeah, and I think, again, we try to keep it so that it's somewhat level funded, so there aren't the spikes and dips and dives. I guess dip and a dive are the same thing, increases and decreases. So, and again, I'm not comfortable coming up with a good number for this year. I'd like to see us maybe funded at the 20,000 or somewhere around there. But for next year, Mark, really have a solid number that really works well for the following 10 years. This one goes to, what does it go to, 32? I'd like to see a good one that goes to 33 next year and a more realistic one. But again, because of a lot of different things, we really didn't have a chance to have a really good, to spend a lot of time on this. We were putting out a lot of other fires. And I think now that Greg is here and Lori's here, a lot of the other supervisory union fires that Chris had to work on, and Lori and Bill are, for the time being, that they're down to dull roars. So I'm really hoping, as we talk in new business, that we can move forward and get a lot of other stuff improved.
Can I ask a question? And you can, if you don't want them to answer it now, that's fine. And I've been meaning to ask it for the last couple of meetings and keep forgetting. Lori, our equalized pupil number was substantially lower than I thought it would be, given the number of students we have. It's a 2-year rolling average. Is that correct?
It is a 2-year rolling average, and it was lower than actually I had thought it would come in at. I knew that the new students that moved in, we'd only be getting, obviously half the count, but the fiscal year 19 fell off, and that actually was a higher count. So that had a bearing on this year's count, because the fiscal year 19 2-year rolling of the 2-year rolling fell off. But next year it should be higher if all the students stay. So
I think that's a big if, though.
Yeah.
But also, if they don't all stay, it's a 2-year thing. So even if they leave between this year and next year, we'll have this year's number plus next year's number, which should be higher. And we'll be getting the full count for this year's students, where we only get the half count. So there will be a year mark when a bunch of them leave, and then we'll have a higher student count than we're actually educating. And also it has to do with, remember, the kids in the elementary school, those don't matter as much to us. The fluctuation that matters to us is the secondary, because those we have to pay for the actual student and the number of days they're in the building, where the state doesn't count them. So if we had 20 new students move in January 1st, we're paying for them next year and they stay, but we're not getting any count for them because the count was in October. So it's actually closer to 3 years before we get any money, full count for them. So that's why I said earlier, the student count really has nothing to do with the number of bodies. It's all a formula, and I call it, it's almost like voodoo economics, or voodoo student count. Does that make sense?
It does. Can I ask one more question?
Keep going.
I think it'll be an easy answer. Lori, do I remember correctly that you were able to recover some of the expense for the new secondary students through CARES?
That is correct. That is for this fiscal year that we're in, fiscal year 21, was around 60,000.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
And that's one of the reasons, Mark, why I was pushing to hold off a little bit on deciding on budgets and whatnot, because although you remember, again, in December, Lori showed us proposed tax rates that were, 10 or 15% higher than they are now, just with her getting the student count changed. And then don't forget too, the statewide increase in budgets, proposed budgets is like, I think less than 1%, Lori, or around 1%.
Right. Mhm.
That's going to make a big difference when the legislature finally finalizes the yield and, you know, gives us the numbers. It's going to help us too. So the tax rate that we're even seeing today could change. That's another reason why I've been a proponent of a live meeting, because, you know, the legislature hopefully will be done by May 22nd. So when we go into this live town meeting, we can say, although we put in this budget and we said this was going to be the tax rate, because what the legislature did, this is what the tax rate is going to look like now. By that time in May, we'll be able to give them a real number, as long as the legislature, you know, goes home or retires or whatever it is they do when they get out of Montpelier for the summer. So is everybody good with this reserve fund for the buildings? Are there any questions?
I'm good with it.
Mark. Oh, go ahead, Rick.
I said I'm good with it.
Okay. Mark and I have been kind of holding most of the conversation, but if everybody's good, let's move on, Lori.
Okay. So the next was the capital vehicle fund here. Again, starting with $100,000, which is what the voters voted to put into the transportation fund. And then, you know, and these were my numbers just to put something in here. So $10,000 contribution, and then there does need to be a bus replaced. $100,000 might be high. I'm not sure. Some can be anywhere from 80 to 100, depending on the size of the bus. And then the tractor needs to be replaced also. So those are the two upcoming items that are on the list to do. So this is where we're at right now.
So Lori, I forgot when I put this together, you know, what we have to throw in there is the new car.
The new car to replace.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
aren't you just going to drive it forever?
No, well, and again, here's another point. What we found out with the cruisers were that if you hold them too long, you really lose out. And because we can buy things a lot cheaper than the public can, sometimes cars are, if you trade a car in every 2 or 3 years, because your municipal discount, you almost drive them for nothing.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, again, when you do your deep dive, I think that's something to really look at. And even on the buses, I wonder if we should look at that too. We had started to do that research before we got shut down with Act 46 and stuff. But sometimes, you know, a private, if the town of Dover goes or the River Valley goes to buy a bus and West River Transportation does, at one time, it was almost 20% difference in the cost between what we could buy and what they could buy. So dealers will give you a better trade-in on a much newer item that they can then market to somebody else. I mean, that's why like everybody's looking to buy municipal loaders and dozers and trucks from towns that trade in often. So, and can I just make one other suggestion is instead of saying Subaru, just put food service vehicle.
Sorry.
Maybe we don't want to buy a Subaru next time.
All right.
Dwight, you had a question? Oh, why is Dwight's name?
No, I'm okay. Sounds good.
Okay. Oh, now Dwight's name isn't there. It's not like the hand, guys. So does anybody have any questions on the vehicle reserve fund? Is everybody good? Let's move on then, Lori. That was easy.
Okay, well, that's what I have for the capital. And then we're down to the operational budget, right? So we do not have to adjust for maintenance and transportation. We did take, I had sent you that email that said we needed to add $10,000, but we no longer have to do that because we took two of the water filter. It's not the bulbs, but help me out here, Greg. What is it? The system? The water filter.
Yeah, the filter. Well, it just said filter UV, and
Yeah.
given the cost of it and the fact that they were both the exact same and both schools currently have the same systems in, it has led us to believe that that number was actually the installation of those systems. And with them being over 5,000, we kind of pulled them. We're going to add them to the capital plan, just because it seems like it will be a better fit there. And until we can figure out exactly what the costs were, we don't think it's necessary.
Right. So I don't need to make any adjustments on the general fund.
Excellent. Thank you so much, guys. Good job. So I think that kind of covers our budgeting stuff for now. Lori, can you go ahead and go back to the other screen? Because I don't even know what time it is.
Okay, I'm going to stop sharing then.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was no questions. Website article for review. Mark, you made a proposal that we would request $30,000 for the development of the website. You wrote up your article, article, and
Want me to read it?
yeah, I have it right in front of me. Sorry.
I just added what I added the fiscal year 22 to the end of it.
Okay, so go just, if you don't mind, Mark, read that for us.
Yeah, I had it open a second ago and I seem to have lost it. Give me one. Okay, here it is. Shall the voters of River Valley's Unified School District approve the school board to expend up to $30,000 for the design, implementation, and maintenance of a website for the district and schools for the 22 fiscal year?
Okay, so that would be a one-time expenditure, folks, not something that we're gonna, ask for every year. Mark, I did ask Mark a question, and maybe I don't see him anymore. Where is Rick Thorpe? He had asked, he mentioned that he thought it would be good to see the year in there, just so people understood it wasn't every year we weren't going to ask for it. But there could be some maintenance costs, and Mark was going to look into that a little bit. But I think Mark, he said between like $50 and
I could give you a guesstimate. My guess would be it's going to be somewhere between 250 and 2,500. But that's really, a lot of it's going to depend on the vendor that we choose and what services they provide and what subscriptions we need. A lot of different things go into that. Just to give you a frame of reference, the Dover website, they've got a $2,400 annual fee for that on top of their development charges. So it is possible we'd be looking at something like that.
Okay. So what do you guys think of asking for $30,000 to develop a new and better website?
Can I say one?
No, go start it off.
I did. I received a copy of the RFP and winning and proposal from the winning bidder for Dover, and there are some substantial reasons why their costs are lower than we'd be looking for. To begin with, their audience. Well, their audience is broad, but the number of people that would actually be working on the website is very limited. And the functionality that they'd be offering is pretty standard municipal kind of, information, where we'd be looking at functionality that would be more interactive in some places. So I stick by I think 30,000 probably is as low as we can go to get a website that's going to do us justice.
Okay, so is there any other comments, thoughts?
Hey, Rich.
Yeah.
A question. So we're asking the voters for 30,000. Would that affect the operational budget, or would that come out of our capital?
No, it would be a special article. So what would happen is you would vote the budget and then you vote that special article. So that would add to the tax rate. And it would add about 2 cents to the tax rate. Now we could say the money to come from, I don't think it's an appropriate reserve because it's not really for the building and it's not for transportation, but we also are projecting a little bit of a surplus. So, I mean, there are other places it can get funded, but it's not free. It's got to come from somewhere.
All right, it's got to come from somewhere. I'm just wondering, since we're asking for only 20,000 capital, maybe we could, take it out of there as well.
Yeah, I don't think it's an appropriate capital expenditure, but again,
well, it is a one-time expense that's over $5,000.
I looked up the IRS regulations. It would not fit into IRS definitions. Now I understand that we're not subject to those same rules, but I think their guidelines are a pretty good standard for us to stick with.
What the appropriate place for it to come out of, Dwight, would be the uncommitted reserves, which is that
right.
We say, if there's any surplus, it goes into a reserve, and then we decide what to do with it the following year. But
yeah.
So it's either we spend, that means we can move $30,000 less to offset taxes. So it's basically that you're paying for the taxes one way or another.
Well, yeah, I understand that, but okay.
Anybody else? Any comments, thoughts? Wow, people are moving around. Laura, go ahead.
I don't know that I think it's a good capital expense.
Yeah, I would have trouble. I would fight tooth and nail not to have it be a capital. I don't mind taking money out of the general reserve for it, but it's but then it's less that we have in that fund. But the other thing too is Greg and Lori, I think you guys can take off if you want, because I don't think there's really anything else I need you guys for, unless you can stick around. I won't make you, but Greg, you ought to celebrate with your daughter, congratulate her on behalf of the board, and tell her thank you for sharing you with us.
Thank you so much. I will take you up on that. I'll talk soon.
Nice to meet you, sort of, Greg.
Yeah, nice to meet you too.
I'm going to stick around in case you need any figures figured out with your special articles.
Okay, well, this is it.
This is it? I thought you were talking about articles later.
No, I'm going to skip over that because I was kind of just using that if we had to make a decision tonight for next week, but we now bought ourselves a couple extra weeks, so I'll smooth that out. Now I know that it's going to be a live meeting. I'll make sure those articles are all set up for a live meeting. I had a lot of things that were open, so I'll get that to you before the next meeting, Lori, if you have any comments.
All right. Thank you all.
I appreciate you sticking around. I know it was a long meeting.
No problem.
Kate has her hand up.
Go ahead, Kate. I'm sorry.
Oh, no worries. So with the website, like you mentioned that you weren't comfortable doing like a capital expense. Is there any other funding functionalities out of this? Like, any other ways to get it funded?
Yeah, so I said I wouldn't feel comfortable coming out of the transportation or the building.
Okay.
But there's that general reserve where we put money into when when we have surplus, and then that's what we use to buy down the tax rate. But kind of my point was I was trying to make to Dwight was that, so if we take the 30,000 out of that money to pay for the web page, that's 30,000 less we can offset taxes. So either way, the taxes are going to go up that 2 cents or 2 point whatever cents.
Wait, so we could have them approve it that way, or we could take it out of a thing and have taxes going up a different way?
Yeah, I mean, so it would just be that you wouldn't be specifically raising tax money for that, but you're also not able to reduce the tax rate as much. So it's kind of a wash. It's 6 of one, half dozen of the other. So
That's interesting.
there's a reserve fund for the buildings. That's the 200,000 we funded.
Mm-hmm.
Reserve fund for transportation. That's 100,000 we funded last year. And then there's a pot of money. It's a general reserve. It's not specifically set up for anything. It's not for transportation or for buildings. So we have a pot of money. We're projecting that this year that pot of money is going to be somewhere between 100 to maybe 130 to 150,000. We won't know till sometime until July or August after the stat report is done. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So what we've done in the past is we said, okay, we're going to move X number of dollars from the reserve fund to help offset the tax rate. So we last year voted to move $200,000 from that general reserve fund into the operational budget, and that saved the taxpayers a bunch of money. I don't know how much. Give me 1 second.
About 14 cents.
Yeah, 13.5, 14 cents, somewhere in there. Thank you, Bill. You're much quicker at math than me. So we were able to reduce the tax rate. We artificially got the tax rate lower 13 cents last year by moving that 200,000. Okay. So there's going to be this pot of money this year, and we think it's going to be somewhere between 100 and 150. So let's just say conservatively, we'll have a much better feel for it in May, but let's say it's 120,000. So we can take 30 of that and put that towards this website design, but that only leaves us 100,000 or 90,000 or whatever the difference is to buy down the tax rate. So it really is, it's one or the other. It's kind of, you know, do you say potato or potato?
Well, Rich,
Yeah.
I disagree with you on one point, which is that money doesn't have to go toward paying down the tax rate. Last year, we had substantial reserves left after committing that 200,000. If we committed whatever we have left, whatever surplus we have this year, we're going to end up with nothing in the reserves other than what we have in those two special funds. So I think that's a separate discussion.
No, actually, Mark, we moved the 200,000 plus we moved 200,000 from that fund into the building fund, and we moved another 100 into that transportation fund, which left us about zero. There isn't a lot. There's maybe 20 or 30,000 left in that. I don't know what the number is, but some of that's also committed. Some of that was specific to certain projects, and some of it was what's called encumbered. It has to go for what the purpose it was given to us for. A lot of funds.
I think when we voted on the budget last year, the anticipation was we were going to still have substantial reserves left beyond the 300,000 we moved into those two funds.
No, it wasn't, Mark. It was, we took the 200 out. That was the substantial reserves that we used up. I don't have my report right in front of me. Bill, do you remember that number?
I apologize. I do not.
I let Lori go 1 minute too early, Mark. I'm sorry. So anyways, it doesn't matter. We'll find out what that number is for next meeting. Do you folks want to spend $30,000? It's going to come out of taxes one way or another. It's either money that we won't have in the reserve anymore. It's money we have to raise in taxes. However we fund it, we need to be able to stand in front of the voters and say, we want $30,000 for a website. So can I go that route, Mark, and we'll figure out where the money comes from later?
Yeah, what I said had nothing to do with that.
Okay.
Yes.
Or the other thing is we can put it off for another week or two, but I'd like to know because I think it would help us figure out the warning, and I can settle up get the warning settled. So I think what we need to discuss is, do we want to recommend to the voters that we spend $30,000 on a website development? I think that's what it boils down.
We had this discussion, didn't we? Like several times. We're just going to have
I feel
an
like we've had it a lot.
put on there. I mean, isn't that all we're doing here? It's just saying the article that Mark wants to put on there. Or, no, I'm sorry, I shouldn't say that Mark wants to put on there. The article that Mark wrote up, is that acceptable to everybody on the board? We're going to put it before the voters, and they're going to tell us yay or nay that whether they want us to spend that money. Correct? Am I missing something here? It seems like it's gotten complicated.
No, do we want to put that as an article on there? That's the question.
You need a motion?
No, because we'll make the motion. I just need the board to, I need the majority of the board to say yes, because we're gonna have to vote on the warning, and we're gonna have warning.
Yes.
Okay, so you got majority if you want to do it. So we'll add that, have that warning on there. We're very simple.
And the voters may say no. And that'll be simple too.
But the board will need to make a recommendation, because the voters are going to do the same thing the voters have done every year I've ever gone to a town meeting is, what does the board recommend? And that's where I think we need to kind of come together and have a recommendation. Do we agree with it or not? Now, we have had the board not weigh in on it too, but that is a decision, because if we agree not to weigh in on it, then nobody from the board can stand up and say, well, I want to do it as a board member. You can get up and say, I'm stepping down from the board for this discussion and go out in the audience, but you're not doing it as a board member. If that's what we decide, we need to decide as a board.
Richard.
Yes, Laura.
I would like to move this along and reserve the right for us with more information later on, which we're likely to get about our finances and what funds are coming into the state. You know, we can say, you know, we put this on and we don't recommend it, but I don't think we need to make that decision tonight, nor do I think we can. So
well,
let's just move it along.
So Laura, I wanted to move some other things along. You guys kept making me let more people speak. So hang on for 1 second.
That was not impatience, Richard, that I was just expressing. And I'm happy to sit here all night with you, my friend.
Okay, I'm looking forward to it because I think we're headed there.
All right.
So I'm going to do the second review of the article. We'll do the second review. We will have to vote on the warning next week. But again, because it's a live meeting, it does offer us some ability to have some discussion about this. And we can actually, as a board, recommend at the annual meeting that you vote it down. Or we can, and then Mark, we'll have a better feel on the numbers too, so we can say, you know, we can do it and here's where we can take the money from. So at least the article is going to be on the warning. Old business, waiting study implementation. Rick, Mark, or Laura, do you guys want to, is there anything new on that we need to know? Mark, I know you've been writing some letters. You write very well. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, I've got an op-ed in Digger that was published today. Just a couple small things on the Burlington group.
Well, hang on, that's the next thing.
Oh, okay.
If you're good, Laura, do you have anything, or Rick? And then we'll get to the Burlington group.
So it looks like there's another hearing on S13 in the Senate this week. And I know Mark has spoken to Senator Campion. I have spoken to Senator Ballot. You know, people are really feeling maxed, but also understanding that, you know, need to keep this conversation moving. So S13 is the Senator Bruce bill. I think there's some changes that are necessary at SCAOE to come up with an implementation plan. Secretary French has indicated that would be really challenging for the AOE to do. So I would expect that there may be some adjustments to the recommendation as to who would put that implementation plan together. Then it will come over to the House, and we will see what we will see over in the House.
So Mark's letter had been that it seemed as though the Senate Pro Tem was going to just kibosh this and wasn't going to go any further.
No, I think I want to be really, really clear, and I actually was saying this to Mark today. If this bill moves out of this is really hard. The Agency of Education is really tapped, working with our superintendents and our administrators in all of our districts, and the legislature's financial analysts, as it happens, the education financial analysts, we have had a problem this year in terms of some being out and others taking new jobs. So that capacity has also been taxed. You all, you know, all of our districts are taxed. I feel passionately we need to keep moving forward, but really there is a capacity issue. And so if something moves out of the Senate, it will move, we will, that will happen because of Senator Ballot.
It will, okay.
We will, that should be clear, I think. So.
Okay, are we all good on the waiting study then for where it stands? Then go ahead, Mark, you want to talk about the Burlington group?
Yeah, so the Burlington group has decided on a official name. It's the Coalition for Equity in Education. The lobbyists they hired even came up with a little logo for them. At this point, I think I would recommend that we join them. There is no financial commitment that is required. We could put funds in if we wanted to, but my recommendation at this point would just be that we join them to be an official member. I think that they are doing good work. They are putting pressure on people that need to have pressure put on them. And I think we should be a part of it. And I'm hoping that Rick has the language for the motion. If not, I can find it.
I do have it somewhere, Mark. I can find it in a second also.
Okay, great.
Okay, so Rick, do you agree?
Sure. Yeah, I'm completely open to, I mean, I didn't see a reason not to really in the beginning, except for the fact that they really hadn't gotten going when I was more involved in it.
You know, I'll say that the concern I expressed to all of you last time was my concern that they hadn't made a decision on whether or not to pursue litigation. And at this point, that is something that they have decided to put aside. They are listening to their lobbyist and taking her advice. And I'm comfortable that it would be a very last resort that they would take up at this point.
Okay, so if you guys are good, if Mark or Rick, is there any questions for Mark or Rick about joining the group? No? Okay,
No.
then Rick or Mark, when you got the language?
I'm looking for it.
While you're
I'm looking to.
Okay. Hey, Bill, I need you to.
I am not looking.
No, I know. I need you to talk to Liz in your office and find out if we're going to have that meeting on May 22nd. We're going to have to do 2 weeks prior to that. We're going to have to do informational meetings. So when's her drop dead date for the paperwork to get to the printer?
Got it.
Thank you.
I find this thing, it's really annoying.
I tell you guys what, can we move on and we'll come back to this then, just so we're not here all night?
Yes, please do.
Okay, sorry to push you, and I had it marked somewhere and I can't find the stupid thing. So I'm gonna move on to new business while they're looking for that. One of the things, Mark, and this is something you had, I think, brought up, changes to the principal's report. So there was last meeting, Bill, you weren't here. We had some discussion about the principal's report, and there's some board members that wanted to see some of the items that are sent home to the parents to give those board members who are not parents and don't automatically get the parental information or the newsletters as Wardsboro does. Is there a way that we could change the principal's report? I know you wanted some unity when you took over. You kind of gave, this is how the principal's reports are going to be done. Is there some wiggle room in that? And can we just have a brief discussion about that?
Sure. So very briefly, yeah, the principals' reports are all the same for all the principals across the SU, because when we got our integrated field review, they did a deep dive study of the educational quality standards. And one of the findings from our review was that we needed a uniform way to report out to the public and to the boards progress towards the educational quality standards. And those 5 elements that are universal, not only in my report, but in every individual principal's report, I would using your term, I would fight like tooth and nail not to change those. However, it is not uncommon for boards to want additional items as part of the report. Ways that we have solved that in other buildings is links at the end of a report. So for example, if a newsletter goes out to parents and it's linked on the website, we just provide a link at the end of a report. We just call it kind of the 6th area, and it's just kind of personal to the building. There are ways to capture monthly, things that are going on in classrooms. The easiest way is simply for teachers to send in one thing a month that they found to be incredibly impactful in their buildings, and send those to the principals, and they add those to the end of the report. I know that Dover does an IB monthly report, and I would assume that we could just probably either attach or put a link on that. What I don't want to do is get away from the 5 universal things that the EQS is looking for. And I don't want the report to be a burden to our principals. I want it to be a reporting out of the work that we're doing. So I can support a bunch of different stuff, but I want it to be efficient. I want it to be effective, and I don't want it to be a burden.
And I think that's all the things the board was talking about too. So Mark, you were pushing a little bit behind this. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want, since Bill wasn't here, what I personally would really like, and links at the end of the principal's report would be fine. I'd really like to see what's going out to the parents. Not being a parent, what I told everybody here is the principal reports when it was the Dover School Board were pretty complete. And not being the parent, I felt like I knew what was going on in the buildings from those. From the ones we're getting now, I don't. So I don't think we need to change the report. I don't think anything needs to be added. I don't think we need to ask anything more of our faculty. I think if you can add links to what already goes out, that's perfect.
I just would want to be crystal clear that we use a communication system as well that is not linkable and does not create a report. So that goes directly to parents, and that is not something that is easily transferable into what you're talking about. So it might not be exactly what parents get. I think what you are asking for is for a taste of what is inside going on in the building. I think we can come up with something like that. But parents are communicated on Wednesday because we've got something going on Friday, and we want to make sure that they're prepared for that. That's not the kind of thing that would happen. So I just want to be clear that what you're looking for may not be exactly what you're going to get.
Okay, I think getting the newsletters that go out at Wardsboro would be great. And Matt had talked about being able to add board members to a list. I would just take a couple check marks so that when they sent out information, we'd be included in that. Only because the Dover doesn't have a newsletter that's going out the way it does it at Wardsboro.
As long as Matt and Tammy are comfortable, I'm fine. I just have to make sure I'm looking out for their time and their energy. So I think I know what you're looking for, Mark, and I think we could probably come up with something.
Great, thank you.
Bill, why don't you work with Matt and Tammy and just come back in the next meeting or next time you're with us and kind of give us what's happening.
I think what we'll do is we'll just change, we'll augment the principal's report the next time, and we'll see if that pleases the team.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Anybody else on the board have any, are they good? Is anybody else? Did I lose? Did we lose? No, there's Kate.
Did we lose who?
Oh, I thought we lost you. I couldn't see you. I'm sorry. Okay, so I guess, why don't we do that, Bill? The only other thing too, really quickly, because it's getting late. One of things when I first became chairman of Wyndham Central, we stopped meeting at Leland and Gray and we started meeting in all the different schools. We would rotate through the schools. So board members, could see what other schools are doing. And, a lot of board members had commented how great it was to walk down the hallway to the meeting room and see the art projects and see what different students were doing. And we used to actually in Dover, when I was first on the board, the first 6 months when I wasn't chairman, we actually would have once a month, we'd have a teacher or two come in and talk about some projects they were doing. Like Mark said, as a non-parent, he doesn't know what's going on in the school. Not that he needs to know, which teacher's teaching what and at what time, but, when he talks to people, we're supposed to be advocates for the school. And if we don't have the flavor of what's going on, it's harder to advocate. So I don't disagree with him. And I also don't want to create more work, but maybe we can start once next year again. Maybe we could have one of the board meetings, just a short period of time, one of the principals, kind of have a teacher come in or start getting more of the flavor of the school to the boards.
I think it's awesome. I think it's a wonderful request, and I appreciate any board member asking it. So I think we can definitely craft a solution that satisfies the curiosity. I absolutely want you guys to be curious about what's going on in the building. So I very much appreciate it.
Yeah, because I'm still waiting for Tammy to invite me over, when they're doing STEAM stuff, and I want to build a bridge and see if I can break the egg or not. So if everybody's good, Bill, real quick, agenda posting procedure. This is just informational. We did miss a Mark noticed that we didn't have a agenda out and thought maybe that's why we didn't have a lot of turnout at our last meeting. And there was a little glitch, but some of it went out. Jennifer's shaking her head no. Bill, you want to just cover that?
Sure. So in general, I create the Zoom link. I create a draft agenda. I share it with Rick and Rich. Sometimes we get together and talk about it if we have time. But then once we have a finalized agenda, we put the documents all together. Meg posts it on the WCSU site. We send copies to Jen Finaldi at Wardsboro, and Jen posts it at Wardsboro, and we send it to Lori O'Hearn at Dover, and she posts it. That is overkill. That's way beyond the law, but we do all those things. What Rich is referring to in a glitch is that the Friday, I believe it was the 19th, you guys were going to meet on the 22nd. I was not going to be there. So I asked Matt if he could get me a Zoom link. Then Matt said, hey, my Zoom link doesn't allow me to have a phone. And I said, oh, okay, that's not going to be good. So I asked Mark to get it for me. Mark got it for me very, very fast. I got it to both Jen and Lori, but then Meg was out sick and I didn't know how to upload it. So it did not get uploaded on that Friday afternoon to the WCSU site. But in general, we have it up at the WCSU site. Mark then copies it on the River Valley site, and Jen and Lori post them and share them as well. So I apologize for the glitch, but I think our system is pretty good to make sure that people find out about what's going on.
Okay, so Mark and everybody else on the board, you guys all good with that? Any questions? Go ahead, Rick.
I have the motion when you're ready too.
Okay, why don't you, if we're all good with that, the posting and the agendas, go ahead, Rick, please.
Well, it's a little more legal than we normally make it, but it reads, therefore, be it resolved, the River Valleys Unified School District hereby joins with other Vermont school boards to advocate to the Vermont legislature for the adoption of the recommendations of the Vermont Pupil Weighting Factors Report, parenthesis, Act 173 of 2018, Section 11, and Peter, I will email it to you.
Okay, so would you like to make that motion, Rick?
Didn't I just make it?
Okay, good.
I'll second.
Okay, so we got a motion in a second. Peter, don't get nervous. We'll send it to you. Is there any discussion? Any discussion?
No.
Okay, if there's no discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 It appears as though the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Let's move forward, guys.
Thank you, Rick. I couldn't find it.
Mark, I'm surprised.
It took me a little while.
Find it, dude. So the last
Have it now.
under new business was charge the superintendent for spring work. So we don't have to finish this tonight. I just want you guys to think about this, but I would like for our board to charge the superintendent and his staff to do some work for us. And this is something we've been talking about from day one. And what it is I really would like to have a deep dive into the capital budget, which I don't think it's been done yet because, again, there was a lot of fires and Chris was just getting his feet under him, and then we gave him COVID. We've asked a couple times for a deeper dive into transportation. You know, do we own our own buses, or should we just see if we can find somebody to contract this work? A deeper dive into operations. Basically, since day one, we just took what was going on in Wardsboro and took what was going on in Dover, and we added to both of them. And we really, all this cost savings we were trying to find, we really didn't save any costs. And we've told boards, we've told the voters at the last couple of meetings, we're going to look into this. We just need a little bit of time. And this is something, I had on my list for last spring, but unfortunately this COVID thing kind of knocked us all for a loop. And I'd like Bill to look into, as the operations is, give us kind of what it looks like from the two extremes so that we can kind of look in the middle and see where we want to go. And the two extremes to me is that we have multiple buildings, maybe even more than the two that we have now. Maybe we need 3 or 4 buildings. We have no buildings and we have no employees, and we're a tuitioning district like Stratton or Searsburg. So I don't want to have a lot of discussion tonight because I didn't think it was going to be this late, but I'm going to put this on another agenda, either either the March 1 or the 1st in April, to ask Bill to look, we want him to look into, and then, wow, the internet is unstable. And then we'll go to, give Bill a few months to do that so we can look into it so that next year when we come to budget time, we're not discussing how the reserves look and what's going to happen. We'll be more set. So I think instead of having a lot of discussion, if you guys are okay, just think about that. And then let's have that conversation in another meeting. And Bill, you and your staff can think about, what questions you would have for us in the broad term. And we'll plan maybe 20 minutes to half an hour. We'll give it quite a bit of time in the next meeting. Is that okay with everybody? Okay. So where's Rick? Rick, you got any other new business that I missed?
Not that I can think of now.
Okay, Laura, you good?
I'm good.
Dwight? Mark?
Just a reminder, can I do reminders now?
Yeah, go ahead.
The policy committee is meeting Friday 9 o'clock over Zoom, and we are tackling a number of policies, but 2 in particular. I don't have the name in front of me, but it's a transgender policy, and the school, the residency affidavit.
Very timely when we're talking about tuition students, huh? Kate, you got anything for us?
Nope, nothing.
Okay. So just so that if people don't want to come back, we had scheduled March 15th for our next meeting, but I believe we all agreed to March 22nd. Is that good with everybody? Okay,
Yes.
so we'll meet March 22nd, 6 p.m. Bill, you can get in another week and a half, we'll get that out, the agenda out to Rick and I, and then we'll finalize that. I do have a personnel contractual issue in executive session. If I could get a motion to move into executive session for personnel contractual?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
8 seconds.
Okay, so Mark moved, Kate second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 So Rich, we're gonna
Aye.
take you and Peter out and we'll get you back in a little bit.
Perfect.
Okay, thank you guys. I still love your background, Rich. Jedi Knight Rich. Bill, you're the boss man. You want to kick everybody out with the board and you and your admin? Oh, you're muted, Bill.
I just pausing the recording, and you want Matt and Tammy in?
Yes, please. Guys, at 9:33, by unanimous consent, the board came out of executive session. No decisions are forthcoming. The superintendent needs to gather some more information for us, and we'll discuss it at the next meeting. Of course, too, that means, Bill, you're coming to the next meeting.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna let you guys know I will be there, but just know my spirit will not be there. My spirit will be watching the game over here.
Well, I've broken your spirit.
I just got,
You know
hey,
what?
I gotta be honest. I gotta be Fei-Fei.
So guys, let's do this too. Let's maybe, Bill, if it's okay with everybody, let's come on half an hour early and do the executive session first. And then Bill can get out of there because the games usually don't start till like 7 at night, right?
Yeah, 7 on that night. They are at 7, so that's good.
So
That's
why
good.
don't we plan on 5:30 for executive session? At 6 o'clock, Bill, you can do your superintendent stuff and we'll let you guys all go and we'll just finish up.
Awesome.
Right, our extra meeting unscheduled that we are imposing on the superintendent.
Well, no, really, we just moved it.
I know, I'm just saying, that's why we're trying to get him out early.
And it's our turn. We're trying to be nice to Bill.
That's right.
Do we put in a caveat that we try to get out a half an hour earlier than 10 o'clock?
I think that's
Hey,
right.
If you guys let me cut off people occasionally after we haven't heard any new discussion, we'd have been out earlier. So
You got it, my friend.
thank you, buddy. Go ahead, Rick. Make that motion we all been waiting for.
Oh, I make a motion at 9:35 p.m. that we adjourn for the evening.
My clock
Second.
says 9:34.
Sorry.
Okay.
Mine
wait
says
another minute.
9:35. Dwight seconds it.
Sure.
Hey guys, just so you know, the price of gas went down 4 cents a gallon to me tonight, tomorrow. So
Did it?
Passing that along to the consumer, right?
I fueled up a day too early.
I filled up on Sunday at 9 cents higher than it was if I'd gotten it on Friday. So
You never sent me the card, Rich.
okay, I will do that.
All right.
Send me an email, buddy.
Okay.
Thank
Good night,
you, everybody.
everybody. Thank you
Good
so
night.
much.